Chapter 656. At this moment, Zhao Feng's strength won everyone's respect and gratitude. If it wasn't for Zhao Feng, they wouldn't have obtained so much from this trip. Let's go. Zhao Feng told the mermaid princess to continue leading the way. After returning to the first floor of the mermaid divine palace, Zhao Feng sensed that his cultivation had reached the peak stage of the small origin core realm and was close to the sovereign lord level. This was mainly because of the immortal springs wine and his king intent. Jiang Fan's cultivation had also increased, and he was close to the peak stage of the small origin core realm. Human. A surge of king magnificent power condensed at the entrance of the mermaid divine palace. Everyone's thoughts seemed to be restricted, and they found it hard to breathe. Only Zhao Feng and Chen Yilin could resist this intent. Jiang Fan was also able to withstand it. Mermaid King, I won't be taking your daughter with me. But before we leave the Mermaid Kingdom, you need to ensure our safety, Zhao Feng said. After that, he ordered the mermaid princess to stay near the mermaid divine palace. Master, the mermaid princess' eyes were filled with unwillingness. This wasn't just the effect of the dark heart seal. It was a feeling of love. Females always admired the strong. The mermaid princess was especially strong in this regard. Father, please let me leave with Master, the mermaid princess begged. There wasn't a single male in the mermaid kingdom that could make her love him. You. The mermaid king hovered in the air above the divine palace. She was furious, as if she had expected better from them. He viciously stared at Zhao Feng, a complicated and somewhat helpless expression on his face. This human had completely enslaved the mermaid princess, both physically and mentally. At this moment in time, even if Zhao Feng removed the dark heart seal, it might not be able to dissolve the mermaid princess' love. Unfortunately, he's a human. The mermaid king admired Zhao Feng's potential and strength from the bottom of his heart. Zhao Feng glanced at the mermaid princess and shook his head. I can't take you with me. I'll remove the dark heart seal after we leave the purple smoke lake. Why? The mermaid princess was heartbroken. In terms of looks, I'm not inferior to you human beauties. My soul talent complements yours. Moreover, once the mermaid race becomes a king, they can reconstruct their physical bodies and completely transform into a human's body. I already have a wife. With that, Zhao Feng led Chen Yilin and the others to swim towards the surface. The mermaid princess was slightly startled upon hearing this. Zhao Feng already had a wife, so she couldn't do anything about it. Fair. The mermaid king heaved a long sigh and put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Humph. Wait for me to dispel that forbidden soul technique. Then I'll capture that brat and make him your manservant. The mermaid king snorted coldly. The mermaid clan was born with a certain innate soul talent, especially the mermaid royal family. Furthermore, the mermaid king was a void god realm king. However, when his divine sense entered his daughter's soul, his expression changed. Zhao Feng's dark heart seal was something that even he, a king, couldn't do anything about in a short amount of time. The dark heart seal came from the Emperor of Death's dark eye secret technique, and normal kings couldn't do anything about it. On the surface of the lake, whoosh, whoosh, Zhao Feng's army quickly gathered at the edge of the mermaid kingdom. Tentacled water monsters, giant water pythons, ancient crocodiles, many powerful beasts of the mermaid race advanced. Chen Yilin and company also stood on the backs of beasts of the mermaid race. The beasts of the mermaid race moved aside wherever they passed. Zhao Feng and Chen Yilin had both condensed half-step king intent, which was enough to scare the beasts of the mermaid race. Zhao Feng stood with his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. More than a dozen miles away, the warm youth's expression changed slightly as he stood on the surface of the water. Zhao Feng's army was about to close in. Zhao Feng, and those from the mystic true sacred clan, have become much stronger. One of them even has a 10,000 ancient races bloodline. When Luan's expression became solemn, he originally thought that even if Zhao Feng and company could leave the mermaid kingdom, most of them would be injured or dead, and their strength would drop. However, to his surprise, the strength of this group of people was much stronger than he had imagined. They had all grown stronger. Furthermore, the mermaid king's divine sense was still lingering in the air. If I want to kill Zhao Feng, I'll have to fight against the entire group. And there's also an unpredictable king hiding behind the scenes. When Luan's eyes twinkled, even if the Mermaid King didn't do anything, he wasn't 100% confident. I'm only 70% confident. This isn't the best time to kill Zhao Feng. If I miss 1 or 2 people, I'll be hunted down by the upper echelon of the mystic True Sacred Clan after the Forgotten Garden closes. The warm youth finally sighed after analyzing the situation. Shua. With a flash, the warm youth flew into the sky. Due to various reasons, he gave up on killing Zhao Feng. So fast. This when Luan can fly in the Forgotten Garden. Zhao Feng was shocked. When Luan's speed far surpassed Zhao Feng's, when he didn't use the wings of wind and lightning. Furthermore, even Chen Yilin wasn't able to fly in the demigod Forgotten Garden. When Luan didn't do anything, he's probably worried about the Mermaid King, Chen Yilin, Jiang Fan, and the army of the mermaids. Zhao Feng let out a sigh of relief. Instinct told him that when Luan would be a strong opponent, and he felt a sense of danger. An hour later, Zhao Feng and company left the Purple Smoke Lake. Release. Zhao Feng released the Dark Heart Seal from the Mermaid Princess through the god's spiritual eye. At the same time, the Mermaid Princess moaned in front of the Mermaid Divine Palace and looked in a certain direction with a hint of unwillingness. That human is keeping his promise. The Mermaid King let out a breath. He didn't chase after Zhao Feng. Instead, he checked on his daughter's situation. Furthermore, the mermaid race was used to the Purple Smoke Lake and wasn't used to the other areas of the demigod Forgotten Garden. Otherwise, they would be suppressed by the demigod intent. On the shore of the Purple Smoke Lake, Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, where are we going next? A core disciple said eagerly. On this journey, Zhao Feng's strength had won everyone's respect. They believed that they would have good gains if they followed Zhao Feng. Heart-nurturing palace. Zhao Feng spat out 3 words. Heart-nurturing palace. Chen Yilin and company were surprised. They originally thought that Zhao Feng would go to the 100-Flower Garden, or the 10,000 Treasure Tower. After all, Zhao Feng was strong enough right now, and he could control some strong beasts and spirits. Going to the heart-nurturing palace wouldn't give Zhao Feng much of an advantage. Everyone, you can choose to follow me, or you can choose to go your separate ways. What you get from now on will depend on your own ability. Zhao Feng looked at everyone. He had already gotten enough in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Next, the thing that attracted him the most was the demigod's blood. Chen Yilin and company thought about it for a while. From now on, even if they followed Zhao Feng, what they got would depend on their own ability. On the other hand, there were very few fortuitous encounters in the heart-nurturing palace. Finally, after thinking about it, they decided to go to the 10,000 Treasure Tower and fight for some rare treasures. Some of the rare treasures in the 10,000 Treasure Tower had the ability to change one's fate, and their effects weren't any weaker than the illusion god wine. Good luck. Zhao Feng wasn't surprised and said goodbye to Chen Yilin and company. Ever since he entered the demigod Forgotten Garden, he had the belief of being a lone ranger. Shua. Zhao Feng's figure sped toward the heart-nurturing palace. The demigod Forgotten Garden had a high level of space, and the pressure was extremely high. Half a day later, Zhao Feng slowly approached the heart-nurturing palace. On the way, he met some geniuses from the sacred land, and some of them were in a sorry state. Zhao Feng sat on a 2-headed blazing horse with 2 dragonfly men following behind him as they floated in the air. The 2-headed flaming horse and the 2 dragonfly people were the new servants that Zhao Feng had enslaved on the ground. Their strength was close to the half-step king realm, and they weren't very big. Their speed wasn't fast enough to cause a commotion. On the way, the geniuses from the other sacred lands were terrified when they saw Zhao Feng's mount and the 2 dragonfly people servants. Heart-nurturing palace. When Zhao Feng reached his destination, he found that there were many geniuses gathered nearby. Plop! A pale-faced genius from the sacred land rolled out of the heart-nurturing palace. The power contained in the demigod's blood is too terrifying. No one has been able to get within 10 yards of the god's blood. The geniuses from the sacred land discussed in groups of 3 to 5 outside the heart-nurturing palace. Suddenly, The crowd went silent, and the terrifying auras of a few powerful exotic beasts and races rushed over. Who's that? He managed to tame a rare dragonfly person? The dragonfly man is astonishingly fast and nimble, and its edge is hard to block. It possesses the wind and poison attributes. The geniuses in the heart-nurturing palace were shocked and wary. So it's him. Some of these people recognized Zhao Feng's identity, and some were even disciples of the mystic True Sacred Clan. Everyone tacitly made way for him. Zhao Feng seemed to be very familiar with the place, so he entered the heart-nurturing palace and headed straight for the pond in the corner. Soon later, Zhao Feng arrived at the pond where the demigod's blood was. Some geniuses from the sacred land stood around the pond. These geniuses were all strong, and they were able to resist the aura of the demigod's blood and get closer. Demigod's blood. Zhao Feng's gaze landed on the drop of golden blood that was around the size of a thumb. As expected, as soon as he got close to the pond, Zhao Feng's body felt an unimaginable pressure. This pressure far surpassed the void god realm, and it could crush all beings into dust. A drop of blood has such power. If I can turn it into my own, my bloodline body, and even my cultivation will increase by leaps and bounds. Zhao Feng was stunned. Even kings and emperors couldn't resist the temptation of the demigod's blood. How can I obtain the demigod's blood? Zhao Feng started to think. Firstly, teleportation was probably impossible. Not only was the demigod's blood powerful, it also had a mysterious connection with the demigod intent. The demigod's blood contained its own spirituality and the power of the demigod, so it was able to repel external forces. Zhao Feng believed that the difficulty of obtaining it was 10 times, no, 100 times harder than obtaining the illusion god wine. When he was 10 yards away, Zhao Feng's every step became extremely difficult as he faced the pressure of the demigod's blood. The closer he got, the more the demigod's divine power would repel him. Suddenly, a genius from the sacred land near the pond screamed, "Arg!" A male at the peak small origin core realm with a strong bloodline exploded from the pressure of the demigod's blood when he stepped within 10 yards of the demigod. Boom! Blood and flesh flew everywhere, and the shockwave made the nearby geniuses' faces go white. Chapter 657. Seeing the death of the genius from the sacred land, everyone nearby trembled. The area within 100 yards is a forbidden zone. Once one enters, the power of the demigod's blood will increase exponentially. Zhao Feng murmured. The other geniuses in the heart-healing palace also noticed this. Ordinary geniuses of sacred grounds could barely resist the divine power from 100 feet away. Most of the geniuses who died had entered the forbidden zone. There's already so much pressure within 100 yards, but if I get closer 15 yards, 30 yards, 10 yards, I'll be able to touch the demigod's blood. Zhao Feng couldn't imagine the strongest pressure. He started to think as he looked at the little thieving cat on his shoulder. Meow meow. The little thieving cat waved its hand, expressing that it couldn't do anything, then jumped back into the ancient metal ring. Zhao Feng wasn't surprised. Normal kings might not even be able to block the demigod's blood's strongest power. The little thieving cat was an intelligent and agility-type beast, and it wasn't a beast that focused on physical strength. Demigod's blood, I'm coming. A cold and indifferent voice came from afar. Shua. A black-skinned man with a pair of black wind demonic wings on his back flew through the air and attracted a layer of black wind baleful qi. Mo Tianyu. Everyone within the heart-healing palace moved aside. The cultivation of this male had reached the late-stage Great Origin Core realm, and his demonic wings bloodline was extremely unique. The terrifying demonic black wind made everyone unable to breathe. Mo Tianyu, one of the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land, and he comes from the Thousand Darkness Sacred Clan. Information appeared in Zhao Feng's mind. There were 200 to 300 geniuses that entered the demigod Forgotten Garden. Everyone knew that the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land were the best of the best. Isn't Mo Tianyu only at the middle stage Great Origin Core realm? His cultivation and bloodline power have increased dramatically in just a couple days. Some of the geniuses of the sacred land revealed respectful expressions. The core disciples of the Thousand Darkness sacred clan revealed joyful expressions. There were many fortunes in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Being one of the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land, Mo Tianyu's demonic wings bloodline allowed him to fly. Shua! The black wind devil wings gently flapped above Zhao Feng and the others' heads, and the Mo Tianyu landed near the pool. Tenjiang Forbidden Zone. Many geniuses held their breaths as their hearts skipped a beat. As for Mo Tianyu, he directly landed in the 10 feet region without any injuries. As expected of the 10 geniuses of the Saint Lands, each of their foundations and bloodline inheritances are extraordinary. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. This Mo Tianyu had entered the demigod Forgotten Garden, and his power had skyrocketed. Perhaps even 1 or 2 half-step king warriors would not be able to beat him. Ha ha ha. Demigod's blood. Fortunately, it came quickly. Mo Tianyu's face was filled with pride. Among the crowd, there were no other 10 geniuses from the Holy Lands. Faintly, he looked down on everyone present. At this moment, news of the demigod's blood started to spread across the demigod Forgotten Garden. However, many geniuses were still on their way. Mo Tianyu had a special bloodline, the demonic wings. His speed and agility were the best among the 10 geniuses. At the moment, only Mo Tianyu stepped into the 10 feet forbidden zone. His cold gaze swept across the entire area. But he didn't find any formidable opponents. Mo Tianyu's gaze landed on the 2 dragonfly men behind Zhao Feng, and paused for a moment. Mo Tianyu had experienced the speed and agility of the dragonfly men in the demigod Forgotten Garden. They were extremely troublesome non-human experts. However, he didn't expect a genius in front of him to be able to tame 2 dragonfly men. His cultivation hasn't even reached the Great Origin Core realm. One has to rely on their bloodline and cultivation to block the power of the demigod's blood. Mental energy isn't very useful. Mo Tianyu faintly glanced over before taking back his gaze. He didn't put Zhao Feng in his eyes at all. At this moment, no true opponents had appeared in the Heart-Healing Palace. I'll try to take down the demigod's blood before troublesome people like Nan Gongsheng and Mengxi appear. Mo Tianyu's eyes twinkled. He took a deep breath and circulated his demonic techniques, increasing the defense of his body dramatically. Ta! Mo Tianyu entered the 10 feet forbidden zone and slowly walked forward. With every step he took, the pressure of the divine power he faced would increase significantly. Even Mo Tianyu found it hard to move forward. Mo Tianyu is the first person to enter the 10 feet forbidden zone and still be able to move forward safely. The geniuses of the sacred land were envious and unwilling. The closer one got to the pond, the higher the chance of obtaining the demigod's blood. Faster! The demigod's blood belongs to me. Mo Tianyu's heart surged. The demigod's blood was almost the blood of a god, and a normal expert could change their fate if they obtained a drop. Even kings and emperors would go crazy for it. 10 feet. Right at this moment, a blue-haired figure stepped into the 10 feet forbidden zone. It's him. Everyone took a closer look and was slightly taken aback. The second person to step into the 10 feet forbidden zone was Zhao Feng. If I come into close contact with the demigod's blood, the power will be unimaginable. Furthermore, I don't know if the demigod's blood has any offensive abilities. Zhao Feng was wary, so he didn't advance rashly. Honestly speaking, he didn't feel too bad about the 10 feet forbidden zone. He had been in the ancient dream realm for a long time, and the pressure he faced was much stronger than the 10 feet forbidden zone. This brat! Mo Tianyu's expression changed when he noticed Zhao Feng. He obviously didn't expect a peak small origin core realm brat to be able to enter the 10 feet forbidden zone. Furthermore, from the looks of it, Zhao Feng didn't seem to be struggling at all. Bearing the power of the demigod's blood mainly relied on one's bloodline, body, and cultivation. If one's bloodline was of a high rank, they would have an advantage. If one's body was strong, they would be able to resist it. Similarly, the stronger one's cultivation was, the stronger one's endurance would be. For example, if someone like Emperor Duanmu descended, they would be able to easily obtain the demigod's blood. Brat! If you know what's good for you, get lost. Mo Tianyu licked his lips and stared at Zhao Feng with evil intentions. He tried to use his strength and reputation to make Zhao Feng submit. Of course, Zhao Feng wouldn't fall for it. He ignored it, but he also maintained a certain distance from Mo Tianyu. Mo Tianyu was on one side, and he was on the other. Under the pressure of the demigod's blood, there would be a lot of resistance when he attacked. On top of that, no one knew what kind of reaction some attacks would cause from the demigod's blood. Senior Marshal Brother Mo. This Zhao brat controlled the army of the water race at the Purple Smoke Lake and forced Senior Marshal Brother 2 to retreat. One of the disciples from the Thousand Darkness Sacred Clan warned. The demigod Forgotten Garden was only so big, and some news had spread throughout the area. What? Forced Senior Marshal Brother 2 to retreat? Hearing that, Mo Tianyu's heart shook in disbelief. Before entering the demigod Forgotten Garden, his strength was slightly weaker than 2 Jusings. However, he soon obtained fortune in the demigod Forgotten Garden, and his bloodline increased dramatically. His strength might even surpass 2 Jusing. However, even then, he was also shocked when he heard this news. Right at this moment, whoosh! A figure with 5 colored lightning wings flew through the air. What a unique power of lightning! Zhao Feng felt the wind lightning true yuan within his body become chaotic. He could guess the identity of the newcomer, without even looking. Lei Zhen, one of the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land. This is going to be interesting. Another expert has appeared among the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land. This Lei Zhen comes from the 10,000 Lightning sect, and he's the strongest amongst the younger generation of the Tao of Lightning. The geniuses all looked over. Many geniuses in the Nurturing Heart Palace were observing the situation, hoping to reap the benefits from the fight. After all, in the past, the geniuses that obtained heaven-defying fortune weren't strong, and some of them were even weaker. From this, one could see that luck played a big role in obtaining fortune. Shua. Lei Zhen flew through the air and landed near the pond. He landed around 80 to 90 yards away, which was even closer than Mo Tianyu's. Demigod's blood. This is probably the blood essence of a demigod, or else it wouldn't be able to last for so many years and still contain such power. Lei Zhen's face turned slightly red when he landed. He immediately circulated the 5-colored lightning and gave off a shocking aura, like an ancient god of lightning. Demigod's blood essence? The flames in the eyes of the nearby geniuses became even stronger. A drop of blood essence contained the life force of a demigod, and it was 100 times more useful than a normal drop of blood. If I can completely absorb the power of a demigod's blood essence, even a normal sovereign's body and cultivation will increase dramatically. The potential of a king or emperor will be no problem. Everyone's heart rate sped up. The blood essence of a demigod was definitely a great medicine for becoming a king or emperor. It was even beneficial to normal mystic light realm sacred lords. Within the 10-yard forbidden zone, Mo Tianyu, Lei Zhen, and Zhao Feng slowly advanced. Among them, Zhao Feng was slightly behind the other 2. No one knows what will happen when the blood essence gets close to a demigod's blood essence. Zhao Feng was extremely cautious. Once the demigod's blood essence attacked, even a true king might not be able to escape unscathed. It's that brat. Lei Zhen looked over and saw Zhao Feng out of the corner of his eye. Zhao Feng was far away from Mo Tianyu, but he was closer to Lei Zhen and was behind him. Fuck off. Lei Zhen snickered coldly. How could he leave his back to a rival genius? Bang bang bang. Lei Zhen pushed out with the backhand of his hand, and a 5-colored claw of lightning radiated an aura of destruction as it slashed toward Zhao Feng. Purple destruction wind lightning claw. Zhao Feng obviously wouldn't just stand by and watch. He waved his hand, and a claw of purple lightning condensed and clashed with the 5-colored claw of lightning. Boom. The aura of destruction swept across a radius of more than a dozen yards. Even Mo Tianyu was affected, and the evil demonic black wind around him weakened. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's figure shook slightly as a faint 5-colored lightning started to spread throughout his body. Whoosh! Zhao Feng circulated his defensive bloodline, and a layer of dark purple scales formed on his body, causing the faint 5-colored lightning to dissipate. Even so, his body still felt numb. This was because his defensive bloodline was biased towards the element of water, and water could conduct electricity. On the other hand, Lei Jun didn't even bother dodging a few wisps of destruction wind lightning that landed on his body. Ha ha ha, not bad. Lei Jun had an expression of enjoyment as he forcefully endured the wisps of destruction wind lightning. The five-colored lightning on his body flickered as he easily absorbed the power of lightning. Absorbing lightning, Zhao Feng's expression changed. He realized that his wind lightning inheritance had met its nemesis. Lei Jun had the bloodline of an ancient lightning spirit and cultivated the power of lightning. He was the number one genius in the Tao of lightning, and he cultivated the five-elemental 10,000 lightning technique, which was the oldest lightning cultivation technique in the Tsang Ocean. Even the Wind Lightning Emperor's talent in the Tao of lightning wasn't as good as Lei Jun's when he cultivated in the 10,000 lightning sect. He couldn't cultivate the five-elemental 10,000 lightning technique, but he chose another path and comprehended the Tao of wind lightning that suited him. Chapter 658. Brat, with your attainments in the Wind Lightning Emperor's inheritance, you can only scratch an itch for me. Lei Jun already had victory in his grasp. He had the ancient lightning spirit bloodline, which gave him a strong resistance to lightning attacks. Combined with the five-elemental 10,000 lightning technique, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. On the other hand, Zhao Feng's water bloodline's resistance to lightning attacks was relatively weak. Lightning Mother of the Earth. A flash of yellow lightning appeared under Lei Jun's feet and shot towards Zhao Feng like a wave of lightning. His lightning attacks are not only compatible with water, but they can also pass through the earth. Before the attack even arrived, Zhao Feng felt a numbing sensation. Purple lightning wind ring. A layer of purple lightning surrounded Zhao Feng's body, and a purple destruction halo appeared under his feet as he faced Lei Jun's attack. Crackle! Boom! The two powers of lightning intertwined. Zhao Feng's lightning attacks were faster and more extreme. Lei Jun's Tao of lightning encompassed the five elements and was both offensive and defensive. This was especially true for the lightning mother of the earth. It was as stable as Mount Tai, and its lightning had merged with the earth. Even though Lei Jun hadn't comprehended the intent of a king, his intent attacks had reached a similar level. Boom! Zhao Feng's figure shook slightly, and his feet felt numb as he once again dissolved Lei Jun's attack. Lei Jun was unharmed as he easily absorbed the lightning attacks with a pleased expression. It's my turn. Zhao Feng harumphed coldly as a wisp of scarlet aura appeared in the purple lightning in his palm. Go! Zhao Feng waved his hand, and the purple lightning turned into a beam of light that contained a wisp of scarlet lightning. Boom! Five-colored lightning surrounded Lei Jun's body and blocked the beam of wind and lightning. This time, Lei Jun didn't have it so easy. The purple lightning contained a wisp of scarlet lightning, which increased its destructive power. The scarlet wind and lightning also contained a kind of destructive flame energy and a burning power that continued to attack his body. You've comprehended a wisp of scarlet destruction wind lightning. Lei Jun's expression changed slightly. Not only did the Crimson Destruction Tempest greatly increase the destructive power of wind and lightning, but it also had a burning effect. To put it simply, after being struck by the Scarlet Destruction Tempest, the damage wouldn't stop. Instead, it would continue to burn for a period of time. Five elements water thunder. The lightning on Lei Jun's body suddenly glowed with a deep blue light, burning away the flame power of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Thunder. All of a sudden, the two lightning Tao geniuses wore solemn expressions. Lei Jun obviously didn't expect Zhao Feng to have learned a bit of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Thunder. My Scarlet Destruction Tempest has only reached the beginner level, so I won't be able to deal with him at all. Zhao Feng's face was cold and resolute, his eyes flashing. That brat's battle prowess is not bad. He is actually able to fight against Lei Jun, and is not defeated in a short period of time. The nearby geniuses from the sacred grounds exclaimed in disgust. Lei Jun's expression returned to normal as a mocking smile appeared on his face. Brat surnamed Zhao, I have yet to display the true power of my five-elemental myriad lightning technique. Even though victory was within his grasp, Lei Jun still felt a trace of fear in his heart. In the wind lightning inheritance, secret techniques like the wings of wind and lightning were extremely difficult to deal with. His 5-elemental wind lightning technique focused on balance between offense and defense, while Zhao Feng's wind lightning inheritance focused on extreme speed and offense. Is that so? Zhao Feng harumphed coldly as his expression darkened. Boom! Suddenly, Xiao Qin's soul trembled as a powerful will merged with heaven and earth, forming a mighty force. What? Lei Zhen's body froze as his consciousness was suppressed by the magnificent power. Half-step king intent. Magnificent power of a king. How is this possible? Even Mo Tianyu, who was on the other side, exclaimed. Boom! It was as if thunder had exploded above everyone's heads as a storm swept across the area, making their souls feel uneasy. The half-step king intent seemed to be one with heaven and earth, and the invisible power made Lei Zhen's body feel as heavy as a mountain, making him feel suffocated. This isn't just a normal half-step king intent. Lei Zhen's face was flushed red. Once he used the half-step king intent, the power of Zhao Feng's wind lightning attacks would increase dramatically. The plaza became deathly silent. Some people thought that one of the top 10 geniuses had arrived. Cold sweat appeared on Lei Zhen's forehead as his soul was completely suppressed. If it weren't for the fact that his bloodline and battle power surpassed normal half-step kings, he probably wouldn't even be able to fight back. This half-step king intent is already showing signs of forming a magnificent power. How did he do it? Could it be the illusion god wine? Mo Tianyu wiped off his cold sweat. He couldn't help but feel lucky that he didn't attack Zhao Feng earlier. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. That half-step king intent suppressed Lei Zhen's soul consciousness, and the magnificent aura suppressed Lei Zhen's body. Shua. After 3 breaths, the half-step king intent disappeared. Lei Zhen and the other geniuses couldn't help but let out a breath. Zhao Feng stood still as everyone looked at him with respect and wariness. I heard that Zhao Feng once ruled the Purple Smoke Lake, defeated 2 Jusing, and entered the Mermaid Kingdom. It looks like he might have obtained the illusion god wine, and formed half-step king intent. Illusion god wine? There are kings in the Mermaid Kingdom. How did he do it? The geniuses of the sacred grounds whispered among themselves. Of course, it didn't matter what method Zhao Feng used to form half-step king intent. The most important thing was that he succeeded. On top of that, his half-step king intent was even stronger than normal. Junior Martial Brother Zhao, half-step king intent. A few more figures entered the heart-nurturing palace. The aura of half-step king intent contained a magnificent power that could be felt from far away. These people were all disciples of the mystic True Sacred Clan. Senior Martial Brother Nan and Dong Wenjian were among them. Their eyes were filled with bewilderment, shock, and disbelief. Senior Martial Brother Dong. Zhao Feng faintly nodded his head as a response. Dong Wenjian, Senior Martial Brother Nan, and company had awkward expressions. When they first entered the Forgotten Garden, Zhao Feng didn't choose to join them, and instead entered the 10,000 Treasure Tower. At that time, Senior Martial Brother Nan was extremely unhappy. However, Zhao Feng conquered the Purple Smoke Lake by himself, and obtained Mermaid Tears, Illusion God Wine, and formed Half-Step King Intent. Next to the pond, Zhao Feng's Half-Step King Intent shocked everyone, and it seemed to suppress Mo Tianyu and Lei Zhen. The two exchanged glances and decided to team up against Zhao Feng. Demigod's blood. The news is indeed true. Senior Martial Brother Nan's figure flashed, and he also entered the 10-foot forbidden zone. Another 10 geniuses. Senior Martial Brother Nan's strength was on par with Chen Yilin before he drank the illusion god wine. The temptation of the demigod's blood was too great. Some geniuses competing in the 10,000 treasure tower or other areas heard the news and rushed over. The situation became more and more urgent. Mo Tianyu, Lei Zhen, Senior Martial Brother Nan, and Zhao Feng were all 10 geniuses. The 4 geniuses became the main characters and slowly approached the demigod's blood. However, Lei Zhen and Senior Martial Brother Nan felt extremely tired when they were close to the 15-foot zone. Zhao Feng's face was still expressionless. However, he also acted as if it was extremely difficult. I can't be the first one. Zhao Feng's left eye locked onto the demigod's blood, and his god's spiritual eye gave him several warnings. The power contained within the demigod's blood was probably even more terrifying than he had imagined. Furthermore, even if Zhao Feng could safely approach the demigod's blood, the other 10 geniuses probably wouldn't give up so easily. Right at this moment, the aura of death in Zhao Feng's soul once again approached. Sung. A warm youth followed the crowd to the heart-healing palace and landed on a building. Demigod's blood. When Luan's heart jumped, the blood of a demigod, and the blood essence of a demigod at that. Even Master wouldn't be able to resist the temptation of the demigod's blood essence. When Luan's heartbeat sped up, as long as he could obtain the demigod's blood, his future potential might even surpass the Emperor of Death. After seeing the demigod's blood, he threw the pursuit of death to the back of his mind. The demigod's blood belongs to me. As long as I can control it, the strength of my bloodline will increase dramatically. It won't be too late to kill Zhao Feng then. When Luan soon made a decision, the demigod's blood had changed his plan. Furthermore, the most ideal situation would be to kill Zhao Feng and take his head. However, right now, the demigod's blood was his first target. When Luan is here as well, Zhao Feng was on guard and didn't dare to approach the demigod's blood. The situation became more complicated. The warm youth Wen Luan was watching from the shadows. Mo Tianyu, Lei Zhen, Senior Marshal Brother Nan, and Zhao Feng all had their own plans and were on guard. On the other hand, more and more geniuses gathered in the heart-healing palace. Many geniuses arrived from all directions. Zhao Feng and company were in a deadlock near the forbidden area. Every step was extremely difficult, and they were on guard. At a certain moment, Zhao Feng's heart jumped as he sensed something. That's. The warm youth's gaze turned toward a certain direction in the sky. A breath or two later, whoosh! An ancient beast with a single horn flew over from the clouds. Flying. It could fly. Apart from some powerful flying beasts, most living beings couldn't fly in the demigod Forgotten Garden. In the next instant, a king's might that could incinerate the world descended from the sky, emitting the noble aura of an ancient divine beast, and it covered half of the nurturing heart palace. Magnificent power of a king. A king-level ancient rare beast. The heart-healing palace was in chaos. Many geniuses felt their consciousness being suppressed, and it was extremely difficult for them to move. Once the magnificent power of a king landed, half of the geniuses present would spit out blood. Hee, it's better to come at the right time. A dreamy voice of a female appeared in everyone's mind. On the back of the king beast stood a girl wearing a blue dress. Her eyes were like stars, and they seemed to be in a dream. Her fine black hair was untainted by even a speck of dust, as perfect as a dream. Mengshi. She's controlling a king single-horned beast. The geniuses present were speechless. The lips of some of them trembled. It was extremely difficult for them to speak under the magnificent power. Within the 10-yard forbidden area, Zhao Feng, Senior Marshal Brother Nan, and Lei Zhen felt like they were facing a mountain. Under the pressure of the demigod's blood and the magnificent power of a king, Senior Marshal Brother Nan and Lei Zhen couldn't stand steadily. At this moment, Meng Shi, with her king-level exotic beast, had suppressed the entire crowd. Whoosh! Everyone watched as Meng Shi landed on the pond under the protection of the beast, and was extremely close to the demigod's blood. Chapter 659. The one-horned beast's body was covered in a layer of violet scales, and it was surrounded by violet flames. It gave off a massive king's power as it descended above the pond. Under the protection of the magnificent power, Meng Shi was less than 5 yards away from the demigod's blood essence. Near the pond in the mental healing palace, the geniuses of the sacred lands held their breaths in shock. At such a close distance, no one could stop Meng Shi now that there was a beast king present. Could it be that the demigod's blood is going to fall into Meng Shi's hands? Lei Zhen, Senior Marshal Brother Nan, and company looked at each other. The two geniuses also looked at Zhao Feng with questioning gazes. Zhao Feng had formed half-step king intent, so he might be able to disturb Meng Shi. As for Mo Tianyu, he was also from the Thousand Darkness Sacred Clan, so he didn't fight with Meng Shi. If she can easily take the demigod's blood, then there's nothing I can say. Zhao Feng's left eye locked onto Meng Shi and the demigod's blood. He knew that he wouldn't be able to fight against the combination of Mengxi and the Beast King. The demigod's blood contained a terrifying divine power, and it also had its own spirituality. If the demigod's blood was just an item without any spirituality, then Zhao Feng's spatial movement would have succeeded already. Under the gazes of the other geniuses, Mengxi slowly approached the demigod's blood. A faint blush appeared on her beautiful face, and her breathing quickened. A drop of the demigod's blood essence contained such a powerful divine power. Mengxi's eyebrows furrowed, and she felt extremely tired. This was under the protection of a king's magnificent power. With every step closer, she could feel the hostility from the demigod's blood become more obvious. Wang! The demigod's blood glittered with a golden light, and an invisible divine power spread in every direction. In this instant, sand and stone flew around the mental healing palace, and the terrifying divine power created a tornado. Bam! 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 The bodies of the geniuses near the pond were sent flying. Wah! Wah! Some of the nearby geniuses spat out blood and fell to the ground. Blood leaked out of Lei Zhen's mouth as he was pushed back several yards. Senior Marshal Brother Nan and Mo Tianyu were pushed back. As expected, Zhao Feng stood on the spot, his figure swaying. Mengxi, who was the closest, was protected by a king's magnificent energy, but she still let out a muffled groan. Her blood surged, and her face turned red. This Mengxi's bloodline talent leans towards the soul. Her physical body isn't that strong. If it was me, I might have succeeded. Zhao Feng thought to himself. Reality proved that even normal kings couldn't easily absorb the demigod's blood. The geniuses let out sighs of relief. However, Mengxi didn't give up. She still had the highest chance of obtaining the demigod's blood. Return! With the support of her magnificent power, Mengxi waved her hand, and a mysterious suction force enveloped the demigod's blood. A layer of dreamy light enveloped the demigod's blood. Buzz! The demigod's blood was like an intelligent being that struggled. Boom! The single-horned beast let out a low roar, and the mighty power of a monarch descended. The surrounding space was seeped into and isolated by a layer of purple lightning. The two teamed up and managed to stop the demigod's blood. Buzz! Boom! The divine power of the demigod's blood swept through the air. The geniuses near the pond were once again affected, and they retreated far away. Retreat first. Zhao Feng resisted the divine power of the demigod's blood and slowly retreated. At the same time, he glanced at the warm youth on the roof out of the corner of his eye, and became wary. However, when Luan's eyes were locked onto the demigod's blood, and didn't seem to pay much attention to Zhao Feng. I'll let this girl use up some of the demigod's blood's divine power. The warm youth stood with his hands behind his back. The shockwaves didn't affect him at all. At this moment in time, most of the geniuses were uneasy, and they retreated 10 yards away. For now, no one dared to fight Mengxi for the demigod's blood. At this moment, Mengxi became the only main character near the pond. Why isn't Senior Marshal Brother Nangong here? Zhao Feng thought of something and asked Dong Wenjian. Nan Gongxing was ranked first amongst the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land. If he came personally, he might be able to fight with Mengxi. Senior Marshal Brother Nangong is still collecting the Qingquan sword. He should have received the news by now, Dong Wenjian said. Someone from the Heart Healing Palace had already gone to the 10,000 treasure tower to inform Nan Gongxing. Only Mengxi was left next to the pond, trying her best to absorb the demigod's blood. She tried her best, but she only managed to get the demigod's blood a little closer. If Nan Gongxing comes, the situation will become complicated. Mengxi's heart tightened. Time passed by slowly. The demigod's blood was still struggling. The crowd wore nervous looks on their faces. After all, the demigod's blood was getting closer and closer to Mengxi's hand. What method is Mengxi using to control the king beast? Zhao Feng's figure slowly retreated. Soon, his gaze landed on the purple-scaled horn in Mengxi's other hand that never left her hand. So that's how it is. Zhao Feng immediately understood. Without outside help, it would be hard for Mengxi to control the king beast, even if she had the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races. However, Zhao Feng didn't understand why the purple-scaled horn was able to control the king beast in the demigod Forgotten Garden. After thinking about it, there was only one possibility. The purple-scaled horn came from the demigod Forgotten Garden, and it could be used to control one-horned beasts. Junior martial brother Zhao, you're not going to fight anymore? Dong Wenjian and brother Nan were puzzled as they saw Zhao Feng retreat further and further away. Of the geniuses present, Zhao Feng had formed half-step king intent, so he had the highest chance of disturbing Meng Shi. I'll give up on the demigod's blood for now, Zhao Feng replied. After saying that, he walked further and further away, leaving the courtyard where the pond was. Even if I manage to steal the demigod's blood, I won't be able to escape unscathed from Meng Shi, the Beast King, the Warm Youth and the others. Zhao Feng calculated in his heart. So, his first step was to give up on the demigod's blood. He wasn't faking it. Zhao Feng really left the heart-healing palace. Meow meow. Zhao Feng reached out and picked up the little thieving cat. The little thieving cat hiccuped and started to act crazily at Zhao Feng. The smell of alcohol made Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrow. Eye of Ice Soul. Zhao Feng's left eye was like a deep blue abyss that chilled the little thieving cat's soul. Meow. The little thieving cat shuddered and sobered up. Little thieving cat, you stay in the heart-healing palace, Zhao Feng ordered. The little thieving cat glanced in the direction of Meng Shi and the Beast King and shook its head. It was an agile spiritual pet, so its physical strength wasn't strong. How could it withstand the pressure of the demigod's blood? A hiccup from the Beast King would probably rip off a layer of its skin. You stay here and keep watch. Zhao Feng obviously didn't have any hopes of the little thieving cat fighting for the demigod's blood. With its body, it probably wouldn't even be able to get within a few dozen yards of the demigod's blood. Meow meow. The little thieving cat finally nodded, and then its eyes began to spin, revealing a hint of craftiness as it gestured at Zhao Feng. It's good that you understand my plan. Zhao Feng paused for a moment. The little thieving cat was indeed worthy of being an old fox. It quickly saw through Zhao Feng's plan. Shua. The little thieving cat disappeared in a flash, hiding itself in a corner of the cultivating heart hall. Zhao Feng sat on the flaming horse he had tamed with 2 dragonfly men behind him. As long as an expert like Meng Shi is here, there's no point in me staying in the heart-healing palace. Only in the Eye of Heaven state can I possess the complete king intent. He left the heart-healing palace without looking back. Chapter 660. Since Meng Shi's family was the strongest, Zhao Feng temporarily gave up on fighting for the demigod's blood and retreated to the back. His Eye of Heaven had a greater advantage when he was far away. However, my space transference eye can only be activated at the most crucial moment. Only then can it have the greatest effect. Zhao Feng got further and further away from the mental healing palace. With the little thieving cat hiding in the mental healing palace, Zhao Feng could share his vision with the latter. In other words, Zhao Feng could clearly see everything that was happening in the mental healing palace. Half the time it took to make tea later. The sound of flying came from ahead, and it was accompanied by a familiar king intent. Nan Gongsheng. Zhao Feng saw the arrogant youth in black from afar. It was Nan Gongsheng. The direction that Nan Gongsheng was heading towards was the mental healing palace. Looks like there's going to be a good show. Zhao Feng was overjoyed. There was an ancient sword in Nan Gongsheng's hand that caused heaven and earth to change color wherever it passed. Qianquan sword. Zhao Feng's expression changed, and the Ice Imperial spear that had merged with his bloodline started to tremble. So, Nan Gongsheng had already received the recognition of the Qianquan sword and could use this inheritance sacred weapon. After all, his cultivation wasn't much different from a true king. Nan Gongsheng had spent a lot of time and effort to gain control of the Qianquan sword. Otherwise, with his strength as the #1 genius of the sacred land, he could sweep through everyone. Nan Gongsheng shot through the air and glanced at Zhao Feng. He didn't say anything and headed toward the mental healing palace. A while later, a few familiar figures appeared in front of him. Junior martial brother Zhao. It was Chun Yilin, Jiang Fan and company. You're all heading to the mental healing palace, right? The competition there is very intense. Zhao Feng roughly explained the situation. After saying that, he walked in a certain direction. Chen Yilin revealed a thoughtful expression. This Zhao Feng arrived at the mental healing palace before us, but he's leaving now. They didn't understand what Zhao Feng was doing. Logically speaking, with Zhao Feng's strength, his competition for the demigod's blood should only be below Nan Gongxing and Meng Shi. Zhao Feng headed toward a certain place in the demigod Forgotten Garden. It seemed like he had given up on the demigod's blood. But in reality, most of Zhao Feng's attention was on the mental cultivation palace. Let's find a quiet place first. Zhao Feng went through the information about the demigod Forgotten Garden and combined it with what he saw with the Eye of Heaven. Very soon, Zhao Feng decided on a target. The library. Zhao Feng knew that there was a library in the demigod Forgotten Garden. The hidden book room was actually a small study room that a demigod used to read books when he was alive. There were some ancient books in the library, but it was said that there were no demigod inheritance cultivation techniques. The demigod had died mainly because of the god tribulation. It seemed like he didn't have enough time to prepare a complete inheritance. However, the reason why Zhao Feng chose the hidden book room was because it was quiet, and he also wanted to explore it. Some people in the true martial sacred land had once researched the demigod Forgotten Garden and felt that there might be some unknown fortune in some places. The hidden book room was one of them. It was the former study room of a demigod, but there was almost no fortune there. That was weird in itself. Just as Zhao Feng was getting closer to the demigod Forgotten Garden, the situation in the mental cultivation palace had changed. The demigod's blood belongs to me. Nan Gongxing descended from the sky and entered the mental cultivation palace. Another surge of magnificent power appeared in the air above the pond. Shua! With a flash of silver, Nan Gongxing arrived in front of the demigod's blood. Nan Gongxing. Meng Shi's expression tightened as the demigod's blood was only 1 or 2 feet away from her palm. Roar! The Beast King roared, and a terrifying wave of purple lightning shot toward Nan Gongxing. This was the attack of a king. If it weren't for the fact that the demigod Forgotten Garden suppressed space, the nearby area would have been turned upside down. The magnificent power of a king appeared on Nan Gongxing's body, and a layer of silver light glittered around him like ripples in water. Boom! Boom! The Beast King's attack seemed to enter another dimension. Meow! The little thieving cat in the corner revealed a weird expression. The power of space, as expected of the possessor of the void spiritual body and the heavenly spiritual body, the two supreme physiques. Zhao Feng shared his senses with the little thieving cat. Boom! The two surges of magnificent power clashed above the pond, and the space in the soul started to shake. Not good. Some of the geniuses from the sacred land near the pond couldn't stand still. The shockwaves from the clash of kings could sweep across half a mile even in the demigod Forgotten Garden. The green jade under their feet started to fall off. However, every brick and tile in the demigod Forgotten Garden was different. Wang! Under the influence of a strange power, the destroyed buildings and roads would automatically repair themselves. Because the demigod Forgotten Garden was a dimension created by the demigod. Here, the demigod intent was an omnipotent god. What kind of level is the demigod and the heavenly divine realm? Zhao Feng couldn't help but look forward to it. The owner of his left eye was a god from the ancient era, and it was definitely above the heavenly divine realm. Come! Nan Gongxing roared as a hole suddenly appeared in one of his hands. A layer of silver light surrounded it. A strong and profound pulling force locked onto the demigod's blood. Obviously, Nan Gongxing wanted to use a spatial technique to take the demigod's blood away. Wang! Boom! The demigod's blood had its own consciousness, and it radiated surges of divine power as it resisted the pulling force from the hole. As I thought, Zhao Feng wasn't surprised. Nan Gongxing's talent in space and his ability to collect items was stronger than Zhao Feng's spatial movement. On top of that, Nan Gongxing's magnificent power and cultivation were close to a king. Even though the demigod's blood was struggling, it was still approaching him. Don't even think about it. Meng Shi used the purple-scaled horn in her hand to control the Beast King and attack Nan Gongxing. At least 50% of her energy was used to control the Beast King. Nightmare Dimension. Mengxi's black hair blew in the wind like a waterfall. In that instant, everything within dozens of yards was covered by a layer of dreamy light. In the blink of an eye, everyone nearby was in a weird dreamy dimension. The original structure of this dimension was still the courtyard of the mental cultivation palace. However, the aura of the original dimension had changed, as if it had been replaced by the aura of another dimension. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Mengxi's waterfall-like hair became twice as long and wrapped around Nan Gongsheng. It's this nightmare dimension again. Nan Gongsheng gritted his teeth and fell into a passive state. The abilities of others weren't affected much in the nightmare dimension. However, Mengxi's strength would increase dramatically. Ranked 239th of the 10,000 ancient races, the Dream Monkey race. A rare soul-type bloodline that can merge the nightmare dimension into reality. The warm youth murmured to himself. One could see how terrifying this bloodline was to be able to change the power of illusions into reality. The pinnacle of illusions is to turn dreams into reality. Her bloodline seems to have touched that level. Zhao Feng's heart shook. His eye of illusion also needed to pull his opponent's mind consciousness into the illusory space he had created. As for Mengxi, she had directly integrated the nightmare space into the real world and affected reality. In this situation, her ability could turn the impossible into the possible. For example, Mengxi's hair was the length of a person in the real world. But in the nightmare space, he could make his hair grow several times longer, just like his imagination in a dream. Of course, the power of the nightmare dimension was limited in the real world. Near the pond, Mengxi's strength had increased, and the surroundings were filled with a hazy light that was completely different from the other areas of the mental cultivation palace. At this moment in time, Nan Gongsheng was forced into a passive state, and the hole in his hand disappeared. Mystic spatial crack. Nan Gongsheng waved his hand, and a layer of silver light appeared in the air with a forbidden aura. Nightmare body. Mengxi's body turned illusory in a layer of hazy dreamy light. Shua. The mystic spatial crack that could instantly kill a half-step void god realm didn't injure Mengxi at all. Firstly, it was her own defense, which only blocked 30% of the power. More importantly, in the nightmare space, her imagination could affect reality. If she was killed in a dream, she wouldn't die in reality. Mengxi's nightmare dimension could merge this effect into reality and increase her defense by several times. As expected of the 10,000 ancient races bloodline. It's monstrous. If I can learn it in the nightmare dimension, it would be like cheating. Zhao Feng's heart shook. However, he knew that this unique bloodline ability was very hard to replicate. In a short amount of time, Zhao Feng didn't plan on attacking yet. Qingquan sword. Nan Gongsheng suddenly took out the inheritance sacred weapon. The Qingquan sword slashed through the void, and there was a feeling of heaven and earth turning upside down. Even the nightmare space was shaken and weakened to a certain extent. This Nan Gongsheng actually got the Qingquan sword. Even though he can only use a tiny bit of the sword's power, it's making my nightmare dimension unstable and expending a lot of energy. Mengxi's heart shook. Nan Gongsheng was indeed worthy of being her rival. Boom, boom. The fight between Nan Gongsheng and Mengxi shook the physical, mental, and even the nightmare dimension. The other geniuses all retreated 100 yards away. Chen Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company clicked their tongues when they arrived. Perhaps Zhao Feng's decision to leave was a wise one. Chen Yilin murmured. Unless Nan Gongsheng and Mengxi's strength was reduced by half, no one else would be able to interfere. The two geniuses entered a stalemate. It was hard to tell who would win in a short amount of time. However, at the same time, the power of the demigod's blood and the spirituality contained within it were slowly decreasing. Let's fight. If they're both at their peak state, I don't have much confidence. A warm youth stood on a roof as a mocking smile appeared on his face. An hour later, in the demigod-forgotten garden, there was a room made of bamboo in a courtyard filled with a fragrance. When Zhao Feng stepped into the courtyard, it started to drizzle. Profound. It was as if Zhao Feng could hear the chanting and the drizzling rain intertwining with each other. However, It didn't rain outside the courtyard. Zhao Feng guessed that this was the intent of the owner of the demigod Forgotten Garden. Sitting in the room while reading a book in peace during the spring rain. This was the demigod's library. Zhao Feng stepped into the library with a hint of his childhood and respect for the demigod. Chapter 661. It was drizzling in the courtyard. Zhao Feng entered the hidden book room and felt a sense of peace in the chaotic demigod Forgotten Garden. The hidden book room was basically a small study room, but there were a few hundred books inside. Zhao Feng glanced at them, but there wasn't a single technique here. The study of dynasty fortune, the mystery of the heavens legacy race, 10,000 ancient races ranking, God tribulation chapter. Zhao Feng's eyes scanned over the ancient books. In the outside world, some of the secrets that were related to taboos or myths could be found in these books. The books here were even more detailed than the 3-star sects of the true martial sacred land. After all, some of the core information in the hidden book room wasn't open to the public. Most of the books in the hidden book room could be read, but there was a limit. Firstly, the books here couldn't be taken out. Secondly, the books in the study room could only be read at most 50 a day. It'll take at least 10 days to finish reading all the books here. Zhao Feng started to think. One had to know. The demigod Forgotten Garden was open for half a month. Who would want to spend 2/3 of their time reading books in the hidden book room? In the past, a small number of people would spend a few days reading books in the hidden book room. But apart from gaining some knowledge, they didn't gain anything. Since I can multitask, I might as well read books here. Zhao Feng made a decision. The 10,000 divine thoughts technique could allow him to multitask and pay attention to the fight for the demigod's blood at the same time. For now, in the demigod Forgotten Garden, only the demigod's blood could tempt Zhao Feng. Shua, shua, shua. Soon, Zhao Feng's thoughts split into 3. The first would pay attention to the demigod's blood. The second would stay in the hidden book room to read books or explore the hidden book room. The third would comprehend and comprehend. There was still time in the demigod Forgotten Garden to cultivate. If other geniuses knew this, what would they think? Normal geniuses would try their best to obtain fortune after entering the demigod Forgotten Garden. An hour later, Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye searched every corner of the library, but didn't find anything. In the study of a demigod, other than books, there was nothing more than the 4 treasures of the study. The materials of these items were extraordinary, but under the control of the demigod intent, they could not be destroyed or taken out. Could it be that there are really no fortuitous encounters in the library? Zhao Feng muttered in his heart. However, the books in the library were attractive to Zhao Feng. Moreover, he was multitasking. Apart from reading, he also cultivated and paid attention to the demigod's blood. Furthermore, Zhao Feng could also split his thoughts and control the 2 dragonflies to go to the 100-flower garden to plunder some natural treasures. The 2 dragonflymen's battle strength approached half-step kings, and their speed and mobility were superhuman. In this way, Zhao Feng's thoughts were divided into 4 parts. However, now that he had formed the will of a half-step king, and his 10,000 divine thoughts technique was close to creating hundreds of thoughts with a single thought, it wasn't difficult for him to do so. With the mentality that he wouldn't lose out, Zhao Feng started to read. Rather than reading, it was more like copying. Zhao Feng held the books in his hand and flipped through them, engraving the contents into his mind. 10,000 ancient races ranking. An old book appeared in Zhao Feng's hand. The book described the thousands of races on the 10,000 ancient races ranking. Even the bloodline inheritances of Meng Shi and Jiang Fan were described in it. Meng Shi's bloodline came from the dream monkey race of the ancient era, and it was ranked 239th among the 10,000 ancient races. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh after reading about the abilities of the dream monkey race. The dream monkey race had a terrifying ability. They could enter other people's dreams and kill them. In the dreams, the power of the dream monkey race was almost invincible. However, there were many limitations to this ability. At least, not many people in the demigod Forgotten Garden could fall asleep. In order to enter other people's dreams, the dream monkey race itself needed to fall asleep. Of course, the most monstrous ones were the legendary races that were ranked at the top of the 10,000 ancient races. Ranked first, the ancient race. When Zhao Feng saw the name of this race, his bloodline shook. Even his god's spiritual eye trembled. Just these 3 words were enough to bring a kind of pressure to the bloodline of future generations. Ancient race. The most perfect race in the world, also known as the true god race. After the Great Ancient War, they were almost extinct. The ancient race was born with the connate god-fiend body. Even when they were young, they had the body of a demigod. They only needed to reach adulthood, and didn't need to cultivate to become an ancient god. Zhao Feng couldn't help but take in a cold breath after reading the introduction. The power of a demigod could be seen from the miracles and power of the demigod Forgotten Garden. However, the ancient race was born with the connate god-fiend body. Even when they were young, they had the body of a demigod. Too heaven-defying. Fortunately, the ancient races have basically gone extinct. They never appeared again in the future. Zhao Feng let out a long breath. Of course, the top 10 races were either extinct or on the verge of extinction. Something worth mentioning, the Heaven's Legacy race was also ranked in the top 10, or even the top 5. Heaven's Legacy race, the most intelligent race in the fan universe. They could even be traced back to before the immemorial era. The most terrifying thing was that the Heaven's Legacy race created weapons of destruction that could destroy heaven and earth. They even created time machines. Even if this was only a rumor, it still needed to be confirmed by merchants. Looks like the Heaven's Legacy inheritance that Xie and Wu Hing entered wasn't simple. Zhao Feng murmured in his heart. Ranked first, the ancient race. Ranked third, the Heaven's Legacy race. Ranked 7th, the light race. Ranked 8th, the golden crow race. Ranked 9th, the destruction dragon race. Ranked 19th, the spiritual race. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh and feel how small he was after reading the top-ranked races. The 10,000 ancient races ranking was damaged to a certain extent, so not all the races were recorded in it. Some of the races weren't recorded in it. Not long later, after Zhao Feng finished reading the 10,000 ancient races ranking, he was filled with shock and yearning towards the desolate era. It was hard to imagine what kind of legends the races of that era had. Time slowly passed. Zhao Feng had already forgotten about the treasures in the book room, and was immersed in the ocean of books. These books were about astronomy, geography, history and culture. They didn't help one's strength. However, reading through these books, Zhao Feng learned many things and greatly broadened his horizons. So the legendary continent zone really does exist. After passing through the Tsang Ocean and the Nanlin Ocean, I will reach the continent zone. A supreme 5-star sect has never appeared in the continent zone, or the nearby saint land of the spirit zone. Zhao Feng learned an incredible secret. The Tsang Ocean and the 3 spiritual realms were just the tip of the iceberg of the fan universe. Unknowingly, Zhao Feng immersed himself in the knowledge. Of course, his other intents weren't idle either. One was used for cultivation, which was easier. Another was used to control the 2 dragonfly men, to explore the 100-flower garden, and search for treasures. The one with the easiest was the one with the little thieving cat. Through the little thieving cat, Zhao Feng could clearly see what was happening in the Heart-Healing Palace. Half of the geniuses in the Heart-Healing Palace had given up on the demigod's blood. Those that remained were all elites, and almost half of them were at the Great Origin Core realm. Nan Gongxing and Meng Shi's fight had reached a stalemate. If this was a real battle, a winner might have been decided already. However, the power of the demigod's blood made the fight for the god's blood more difficult. Even true kings would feel pressured by the demigod's blood. A day passed. Nan Gongxing and Meng Shi both had tired expressions, and their battle power had decreased. However, neither of them gave up. As long as one of them gave up, the other would have a high chance of obtaining the demigod's blood. Hehe, since you haven't decided a winner yet, I'll take care of the demigod's blood. A light laugh sounded from above. Who's there? The expressions of Nan Gongxing and Meng Shi changed slightly, as they instinctively raised their heads. The owner of the voice was able to easily get close to them, and the demigod's blood. Shua. A bright youth floated in the air above the demigod's blood and radiated a frightening aura. Come! The warm youth reached out and reached between the two geniuses to take the demigod's blood. Boom! The instant the warm youth waved his hand, space started to tremble, and a blinding golden light surrounded his skin. Looking closely, the warm youth's hair and skin were covered in a layer of gold. From afar, he looked like a god of war. Don't even think about it. Mengshi gripped the purple-scaled horn and controlled the Beast King to attack the warm youth. Open! The warm youth wasn't scared at all. He was like a golden god of war, as he blocked the Beast King's attack with one palm. Boom! A terrifying wave of golden air and purple lightning swept across half of the heart-healing palace. The nearby geniuses exclaimed, "His battle power is comparable to a king? How is that possible?" Even Mengshi was slightly dazed. Because of the soul control, she could only use 70% of the battle power of a king. However, even then it was still too shocking. Ding! Nan Gongxing sent out a silver streak of light. The forbidden power of the mystic spatial rend landed on the warm youth, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. A crack appeared on the warm youth's golden skin, but there was no blood. At this moment, it was as if he had turned into an omnipotent god of war. The aura of an ancient bloodline, Jiang Fan, who was in the corner, felt his bloodline become suppressed. Ranked 98th of the 10,000 ancient races, the Heaven-Sun battle race. Shock appeared in Mengshi's dreamy eyes for the first time. Ranked 98th of the 10,000 ancient races. This was the first time she had heard of a 10,000 ancient races bloodline that was ranked in the top 100. The top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races are all heaven-defying existences. Jiang Fan's bloodline was suppressed. His bloodline was ranked 300th of the 10,000 ancient races, which was a huge difference from the Heaven-Sun battle race. The top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races is a huge difference. The bloodline of the Heaven-Sun battle race can allow my battle power to fight against a king for a short amount of time. A faint smile of victory appeared on the warm youth's face. He had blocked Nan Gongxing's attack head-on against the Beast King. When Luan appeared in front of the shocked gazes of the geniuses from the sacred land. When Luan's figure shook slightly, but he pressed down with one hand. Even the demigod's blood trembled under the aura of a bloodline ranked in the top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races. The warm youth's golden hand grabbed the demigod's blood. Chapter 662. Demigod Forgotten Garden Book Storage Room. Heaven-Sun Battle Race. Ranked 98th among the 10,000 ancient races. Zhao Feng was stunned by the warm youth's true strength. He had seen the 10,000 ancient races ranking before, so he obviously knew how terrifying the top 100 bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races were. At this moment, most of his attention was focused on the heart-nurturing palace. The warm youth descended from the sky like a golden god of war that could fight against kings. Nan Gongxing and Mengshi had fought for more than a day, and they were both mentally exhausted. What was even more interesting was that the demigod's blood had been exhausted by the two king geniuses, and its resistance had decreased. At this critical moment, the warm youth forcefully interfered. The mantis stalked the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Wang! The demigod's blood trembled as the golden hand grabbed it, and the power of the demigod's divine power swept out. But it wasn't as dominant as before. When Luan stood proudly as his skin and hair turned golden, and his body radiated a bright golden light. The bloodline aura of the 10,000 ancient races made the hearts of the geniuses in the heart-nurturing palace tremble. Come! When Luan's golden hand seemed to be made of metal as he grabbed the demigod's blood and moved closer to his interspatial ring. However, the demigod's blood had its own consciousness and started to struggle. If this blood could be taken away so easily, Zhao Feng's spatial movement and Nan Gongxing's spatial techniques would have succeeded long ago. However, the warm youth had improved from Nan Gongxing and Mengshi's foundation. He was barely able to control the demigod's blood, even if it was just an illusion. He tried to get the demigod's blood closer to his interspatial ring. Don't even think about it. How could Nan Gongxing and Mengshi let him do as he pleased? Seeing this, Wen Luan could only block the Beast King's attack and take Nan Gongxing's slash head-on. Boom! The clash of kings created a terrifying shockwave that swept everything within half a mile. There wasn't a single genius within 20 yards of the pond. Ding! Nan Gongxing left a gash on Wen Luan's neck, but this time, some blood seeped out. Si! The sunny youth groaned, and his entire body shone with a dazzling golden light. His wounds healed at a visible rate. The recovery speed of a bloodline ranked in the top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races was naturally outstanding. Retreat! The warm youth took Nan Gongxing's attack head-on and flew away. If he could obtain the demigod's blood, it would be worth it even if he had to pay a price. Stay here. Just as the sunny youth flew 7 or 8 feet away, a dark silver shadow appeared beside him, accompanied by a spatial fluctuation. Universe sword. Nan Gongxing's figure appeared in the silver figure, and when he slashed out with the inheritance sacred sword, space started to tremble. As expected of the Holy Land's #1 genius, with the Nan Gongxing spatial spiritual body's talent in space, he won't let Wen Luan escape unscathed. Zhao Feng used the little thieving cat to pay close attention to the situation. No one noticed. The blurry image of the Eye of Heaven appeared in the air above Yang Exan Palace, before quickly fading away. Clang! The warm youth's golden fist landed on the universe sword, and his figure shook. The demigod's blood in his other hand almost flew out. The power of the universe sword was too terrifying. Even in Nan Gongxing's hands, it was only able to unleash a small portion of its power. Whoosh! Before the sunny young man could steady himself, a waterfall-like strand of hair, wrapped in a layer of dreamy light, wrapped around his other hand. That hand was holding the demigod's blood. Whoosh! The demigod's blood struggled to fly out of the warm youth's hand. Wang! The demigod's blood left his control and floated in the air, releasing a golden hum. Before the 3 king geniuses could react, the situation suddenly changed. Whoosh! The demigod's blood flew through the air, as if it couldn't endure the torture of the 3 king geniuses anymore. Chase! Nan Gongxing reacted the quickest, and his figure flashed toward the direction that the demigod's blood was heading toward. The warm youth followed behind unwillingly. He was just one step away from obtaining the demigod's blood. Wen Luan had to admit that he had underestimated Nan Gongxing's strength. Nan Gongxing's battle power was comparable to a king's, and his spatial spiritual body's spatial talent was even more mysterious. Mengxi had a beast king, so she was also comparable to a king. 3 king geniuses. The geniuses in the mental healing palace could only look up at the 3 figures. Some geniuses followed the 3 king geniuses. Meow! The little thieving cat's figure flashed and disappeared into the air, chasing after the 3 geniuses. That's right, follow Mengxi. Zhao Feng praised. Mengxi sat on the beast king, and her magnificent power was extremely strong, so it was easy to lock onto her. The other geniuses that wanted the demigod's blood also followed Mengxi. Shua! Most of Zhao Feng's attention went back to the book room. Now that the demigod's blood had flown away, the situation between the 3 king geniuses would become even more complicated. Zhao Feng predicted that the fight for the demigod's blood wouldn't be settled in a short amount of time. As long as one of the 3 king geniuses wanted the demigod's blood, the other 2 would attack together. Within the book room, Zhao Feng was multitasking. While he was reading, he was also cultivating. The rule of the book room was that he could only read 50 books a day. Therefore, he would be able to finish reading 50 books a day very quickly. When Zhao Feng wanted to take the 51st book, he would face strong resistance. This way, Zhao Feng had more energy to cultivate and control the 2 dragonfly men. The battle power of the 2 dragonfly men was close to a half-step king, and they were very agile. Even if they encountered danger, they would be able to escape unscathed. Every 2 days, the 2 dragonfly men would return once to deliver some treasures to Zhao Feng. The rewards in the 100 Flower Garden are a bit better than the Purple Smoke Lake. Zhao Feng organized the spoils of war from the 2 dragonfly men. The dragonfly men were a type of human, and they were similar to the mermaid race. Even if Zhao Feng didn't personally take action, the treasures that the 2 dragonfly men had gathered were still considerable. Scarlet Fire Lotus. Sky Ginseng very good. Zhao Feng's eyes landed on two of the treasures, and joy appeared on his face. The value of these two treasures wasn't any lower than the purple-scaled grass. The Scarlet Fire Lotus contained the pure power of the Scarlet Fire, and it could increase one's comprehension of the power of the Scarlet Fire. The Scarlet Fire Wind Lightning that Zhao Feng was comprehending just happened to need the power of the Scarlet Fire. The Scarlet Fire Wind Lightning merged with the power of the Scarlet Fire, making it even more destructive and able to burn the opponent. The Sky Limit Ginseng was a treasure that could increase one's true yuan and transform one's body. It was extremely effective for those below the Void God realm. With this Sky Ginseng, my cultivation can break through to the Great Origin Core realm. The Scarlet Fire Lotus can increase my comprehension of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning. Zhao Feng started to think. The Sky Ginseng used external power to increase one's cultivation, so he needed to be careful. However, Zhao Feng thought that he had already formed a crystal core and comprehended king intent, so his state of existence and body were on the same level as a king. The Great Origin Core realm didn't have any bottlenecks for him. Thinking up to there, he decisively ate the Sky Ginseng. The power of the Sky Ginseng was extremely strong. Normal Origin Core realms would need to refine it into a spiritual pill, or use it a few times. However, Zhao Feng didn't worry at all and ate it right away. Instantly, a dominating surge of heaven-earth yuan qi appeared within Zhao Feng's body. It was like a deep pond that continuously flowed out. If it were a normal sovereign, their body would probably explode and die. However, Zhao Feng felt a warm sensation in his body. He circulated his half-step king intent and easily controlled this surge of heaven-earth yuan energy into his crystal core. Half a day later, the power of the Sky Ginseng was easily stabilized by Zhao Feng. On the next day, he still multitasked, cultivating and reading at the same time. Reading was very simple. He could only read 50 books a day, so Zhao Feng soon finished them. The fight for the demigod's blood was slightly complicated. On the first day he left the Heart Healing Palace, the demigod's blood mysteriously disappeared. There was no helping it. The demigod's blood flew extremely fast, but it was too small. It was hidden in a corner of the demigod Forgotten Garden, and was extremely hard to find. The three king geniuses, and the geniuses of the other sacred lands obviously wouldn't give up, so they spent a lot of effort to find the demigod's blood. Although the demigod's blood had disappeared, the three king geniuses were able to track it down. The geniuses that entered the sacred land all had bloodlines, techniques, and secret techniques. They finally found the demigod's blood. Whoosh! The demigod's blood flashed through the leaves of a tree. Chase! The three king geniuses chased after him after hearing the news. This time, the demigod's blood flew for a long time before entering a terrifying graveyard. This graveyard was in the back mountain of the demigod Forgotten Garden, and it was dead silent. There wasn't a single living being, and only some graves could be seen. Unmarked graveyard. The geniuses of the sacred land exclaimed. Zhao Feng was also paying attention to this. The unmarked graveyard is a forbidden area of the demigod Forgotten Garden. The geniuses of the sacred land knew about the forbidden area of the demigod Forgotten Garden. Zhao Feng also knew how terrifying the unmarked graveyard was. Not many geniuses were willing to go to the unmarked graveyard. Firstly, the unmarked graveyard was extremely dangerous, and there were some powerful ghosts and vengeful spirits. Some of them were even at the king rank. Secondly, the unmarked graveyard was just a graveyard, and there weren't any treasures. This graveyard still had some power of curses in it. If one wasn't careful, they wouldn't even know how they died. Simply put, the unmarked graveyard was similar to the forbidden ground of 100 graves, but it was thousands of times more dangerous. So, the demigod's blood flew into the unmarked graveyard. Some of the geniuses of the sacred land hesitated. However, the three king geniuses didn't stop and flew in. At this moment in time, this was the 5th day since Zhao Feng had entered the hidden book room. 5 days. Zhao Feng had read half of the books in the hidden book room. On top of that, the medicinal power of the extreme heaven ginseng he had consumed had been completely absorbed including some of the effects of the immortal spring. Early stage Great Origin Core Realm. Zhao Feng used his half-step king intent to control the true yuan within his body. The crystal core within his body had increased in size. As expected, the Great Origin Core Realm wasn't a bottleneck for Zhao Feng. As long as the quantity was enough, success would follow. Because I've already formed a crystal core, breaking through to the Great Origin Core Realm doesn't increase my strength by much. Zhao Feng murmured. On the other hand, he had high hopes for the Scarlet Fire Lotus, since it could help him cultivate the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning. While cultivating, Zhao Feng was multitasking and reading a book. A book opened in his hand, and his heart jumped. 8 Great God Eyes? This book was placed in an inconspicuous corner of the library. Chapter 663. Zhao Feng's heart skipped a beat as he looked at the thin book in his hand. He didn't think that the demigod's study would contain information regarding the 8 Great God Eyes. However, this book was very thin, and the content inside was pitifully small. It wasn't like the 10,000 Ancient Races ranking, which was a thick book that had a comprehensive analysis of the history and special abilities of some races. Even so, Zhao Feng was extremely excited. His left eye was very likely to be a type of God Eye, the 9th God Eye. With this thought in mind, Zhao Feng slowly opened the 8 Great God Eyes. After the primal chaos, when the fan universe was formed, the 8 Great God Eyes were born. Zhao Feng's attention was attracted by the content of the book. According to the book, the 8 Great God Eyes were extremely unique and stood above heaven and earth. Because of their uniqueness, the 8 Great God Eyes weren't listed on the 10,000 Ancient Races ranking. Otherwise, every God Eye would be ranked in the top 20 of the 10,000 races, and even the top 10 would change. Zhao Feng understood after reading this. The 8 Great God Eyes were too unique, and they were closely related to the fan universe. Therefore, the 8 Great God Eyes were on par with the 10,000 Ancient Races ranking, and they were even more unique. The book analyzed the abilities of the 8 Great God Eyes. Even for demigods, the 8 Great God Eyes were legendary existences. The 8 Great God Eyes were the Samsara God Eye, the Space-Time God Eye, the Destiny God Eye, the Death God Eye, the Life God Eye, and the Destruction God Eye. It wasn't hard to see from the names. The 8 Great God Eyes were related to the fan universe's most fundamental things. Samsara, space-time, and destiny were all abstract things. For example, the space-time God Eye represented absolute control over time and space. Zhao Feng read through all the abilities of the 8 Great God Eyes. In reality, most of the abilities of the 8 Great God Eyes were guesses and theories. Zhao Feng analyzed the abilities of the Death God Eye. In front of the Death God Eye, all living beings will lose their control over life and death, even heavenly gods. When Zhao Feng saw this, his heart turned cold. In the last chapter of the 8 Great God Eyes, Zhao Feng saw a few words: Supreme Ancestral Eye. Legend has it that when the 8 Great God Eyes gather, they can summon the Supreme Ancestral Eye that can alter the world and restore the order of the universe. Supreme Ancestral Eye. Zhao Feng was shocked. However, once the Ancestral Eye is opened, everything in the world will disappear. It was rumored that everything in the world was a dream of Brahma. Once the ancestral pupil opens its eyes, that dream will be destroyed. Seeing this, Zhao Feng could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. This was simply too shocking. Everything in heaven and earth was a dream, and when the Ancestral Eye opened, it would destroy the dream. Everything would cease to exist. Of course, according to the book, this was only a legend. The Supreme Ancestral Eye had never appeared since the birth of the fan universe. The 8 Great God Eyes did not summon the Ancestral Eye either. The book also analyzed and conjectured about the 9th God Eye. 9 is the limit of numbers. The fan universe should still lack a 9th God Eye. Maybe the 9 eyes combined will be able to verify the authenticity of the Supreme Ancestral Eye. Up to this point, the thin book, The 8 Great God Eyes, reached its end. Zhao Feng let out a long breath. The 8 Great God Eyes were too mysterious, and they seemed to transcend everything. Up until now, Zhao Feng had never seen a single god eye, not even the master of the demigod Forgotten Garden. After reading the 8 great god eyes, Zhao Feng calmed himself down and started to read the next book. He still needed 4 or 5 days to finish reading all the books in the library room. Zhao Feng's goal was to finish reading all the books in the library room. Up until now, no genius had ever completed this record. The demigod Forgotten Garden had many treasures, but the library room only had some knowledge. Furthermore, most of this knowledge could be found in the true martial sacred land. No one was willing to spend 2/3 of their time reading books. Zhao Feng was an exception. He cultivated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and could multitask. Furthermore, he had truly calmed down and developed an interest in the books in the library. In the next 2 days, while reading, Zhao Feng used the Scarlet Fire Lotus to comprehend the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning. His king intent greatly increased his comprehension speed. On the 7th day after entering the library room, Zhao Feng's comprehension of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning had reached 20 to 30%. Wang, a small wisp of scarlet red wind lightning appeared in Zhao Feng's palm and mixed into the purple destruction wind lightning. If I comprehend 20 to 30% of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning, normal half-step kings won't be able to fight back against me. Zhao Feng murmured. The Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning wasn't just more destructive, it also had a continuous burning effect. This meant that the damage the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning dealt to the target would increase by several times. Zhao Feng believed that the next time he met Lei Zhen, he would be able to gain the upper hand with the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning, even if it countered him. In reality, if Zhao Feng used his Soul Dao Eye bloodline techniques against Lei Zhen, the latter wouldn't be able to fight back at all. However, right now Zhao Feng was still holding back. Time passed by. Zhao Feng kept an eye on the situation in the graveyard. Graveyard. Meow. The little thieving cat hid in a corner of a graveyard and seemed to be extremely careful. The faint golden demigod's blood floated above a large tomb. The 3 king geniuses kept each other in check, and none of them gave up. The large grave was 100 yards wide, and it was at the center of the graveyard. The graveyard was dark and cold. It was always covered in darkness, and there was an invisible power of curse. In the air, powerful vengeful spirits would occasionally fly over, revealing their mouths, fangs, and white hands. Some of them were void god realm kings and emperors when they were alive. If it was a normal genius from a sacred land, they would have lost a layer of skin, even if they managed to escape alive. Luckily, it's the little thieving cat. If it were any other target, they would have died to the curse and vengeful spirits already. Zhao Feng murmured. He had kept the little thieving cat to keep an eye on the demigod's blood for a reason. Meow. The little thieving cat's figure and aura merged into the darkness, and it was in a profound state. It held the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger, a sacred weapon of the Tao of Assassination. It was like the uncrowned king of the darkness, and the power of the curse that came close to it would be shattered. Boom! Boom! The battle power of the 3 king geniuses had reached the king level, and when they fought, the power of hatred and curses were all shattered. Apart from the 3 king geniuses, there were also a few geniuses from the sacred land, such as the 10 geniuses, that could stay in the graveyard. There were also those with bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races that had the power of the god's spiritual eye. Jiang Fan was one of them, and his 10,000 ancient races bloodline could repel the power of the curse. Some geniuses of the wicked Tao that specialized in enslaving ghosts could also survive in the graveyard for a while. Apart from that, some geniuses from the sacred land wouldn't be able to survive after entering the graveyard. Some would escape, while others would die in the graveyard. Zhao Feng couldn't help but feel lucky that he didn't get involved in this. When the 3 king geniuses get tired and the consciousness of the demigod's blood is worn down, that'll be the best time for me to take action. Zhao Feng thought. However, when one's cultivation reached the level of the 3 king geniuses, the power within their bodies was almost limitless. After all, they stood at the peak of the Origin Core Realm. The Origin Core Realm was a huge leap in the quality of true Yuan. The Great Origin Core Realm could not only easily absorb Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi, but it could also use the power of heaven and earth. Another day passed. The demigod's blood managed to escape under the control of the three king geniuses and entered the large graveyard. Unmarked graveyard, central graveyard. The expressions of Nan Gongsheng, Meng Shi, and Wen Luan changed dramatically. The central graveyard was a forbidden area of the Forgotten Garden. In the past, no one was able to escape from the central graveyard every time the Forgotten Garden opened. Of course, very few people dared to enter the central graveyard. Apart from danger, there weren't many fortuitous encounters in the unmarked graveyard. Chase. The warm youth paused for a moment before quickly closing in. He was very confident in his 10,000 ancient races bloodline. Shua. A profound silver figure was even faster than him, and chased into the central mausoleum. As expected of Nan Gongsheng, Zhao Feng sighed in his heart through the little thieving cat's eyes. From his analysis, Nan Gongsheng's raw power was the strongest amongst the three king geniuses. His strength didn't come from the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races, or the power of a king beast. Nan Gongsheng had formed king intent, and his cultivation was close to that of a king. His spatial talent and inherited battle techniques had both reached an incredible level. The ethereal body allowed him to be more compatible with heaven and earth. For the opening of the Forgotten Garden this time, the battle prowess of the geniuses of the sacred lands is also at the peak of all time. Even if it's a forbidden area, we can still barge in. Meng Shi was the third to enter the central tomb after Wen Luan. Wen Luan. As Meng Shi strode forward, she sent a message to the radiant youth. How can I help you? The warm youth chased after Nan Gongsheng and the demigod's blood. In the mausoleum passage, Buzz. Nan Gongsheng used his spatial movement technique to catch up to the demigod's blood and stop it. Let's team up and finish off Nan Gongsheng first before discussing how to split the demigod's blood. Meng Shi said. She knew a thing or two about the sunny young man. When Luan was only able to enter the demigod Forgotten Garden with the help of the Thousand Darkness Sacred Sect, the two of them were more suitable to be allies. All right, the warm youth agreed. Nan Gongsheng's terrifying battle power and spatial abilities gave him a headache. Kill. After the two finished their discussion, they charged toward Nan Gongsheng without hesitation. The warm youth's skin seemed to be made of metal, and he glowed with a golden light as he thrust his golden hand toward Nan Gongsheng. Nightmare Dimension. Meng Shi's figure flashed forward, and a layer of hazy Nightmare Dimension entered the surrounding space. The power of Nightmare Dimension entered reality, and Meng Shi's battle power increased dramatically. She could turn the impossible into the possible. Her hair and arms became 2 or 3 times longer as she attacked Nan Gongsheng. This ability broke the limits of reality. It was unimaginable. Oomph! Nan Gongsheng snickered coldly as a layer of silver light surrounded his body, and space seemed to ripple. Boom! Boom! The combined attacks of the two kings made Nan Gongsheng's body shake, and the spatial defense around him became unstable. At this critical moment, meow! A silver-gray cat merged into the darkness of the mausoleum passage, and a dark dagger appeared in its hand. At the same time, a blurry silhouette appeared in the darkness of the Eye of Void. Chapter 664. In a flash, the balance between the three king geniuses was about to be broken. Zhao Feng finally couldn't sit still anymore. Once Meng Shi and Wen Luan team up and finish off Nan Gongsheng, the situation will become very unfavorable for me. Zhao Feng did not wish to see such a situation. No matter how strong Nan Gongsheng was, or how much of a threat he posed, he was still from the same 3-star mystic true sacred clan as Zhao Feng. Relatively speaking, Meng Shi and Wen Luan working together would bring even greater danger to Zhao Feng. Boom! Boom! Nan Gongsheng used a spatial defensive technique to block Meng Shi and Wen Luan's attacks for a short period of time. Whoosh! With a flash of silver light, Nan Gongsheng grabbed the demigod's blood and flew out of the central tomb. Nightmare Prison! Meng Shi waved her hand, and dense dream-colored lines formed an illusory prison that merged into reality and stopped Nan Gongsheng's spatial movement. Heaven-sealing battle fist! The warm youth leaped into the air, and punched out a giant golden fist that blocked off Nan Gongxing's path of retreat. Heaven-splitting slash. Nan Gongxing gripped the Qianquan sword and slashed out, leaving behind spiderweb-like cracks in the air as a forbidden aura spread in every direction. Bang! Boom! Nan Gongxing's figure shook, and the silver light around him dimmed by more than half. Amidst this, there were also the roars of exotic beasts and the pressure of the mighty power of kings. Wow! Nan Gongxing quickly retreated as blood leaked out of his mouth. The demigod's blood in his hand also left his control. His face was gloomy, filled with hatred and unwillingness. In a one-on-one fight, the warm youth and Mengshi probably wouldn't be a match for him. But what could he do? Mengshi had obtained the king beast, and the help of the sunny youth, the big dark horse. Get rid of him first. Mengshi snickered coldly as her black hair grew several times longer, trapping the demigod's blood in a corner of the dream prison. The warm youth and the beast king charged toward Nan Gongxing. While Mengshi controlled the demigod's blood, she also used the nightmare dimension to stop Nan Gongxing from escaping. Obviously, the two teamed up to kill Nan Gongxing, or at least severely injure him, so that he wouldn't be able to fight for the demigod's blood for a while. It's not difficult for me to escape, but to give up the demigod's blood. Nan Gongxing was helpless and unwilling. At this moment, his gaze came into contact with the void in front of him, and his heart shuddered. To be exact, Nan Gongxing's gaze landed on the air behind Mengshi. The blurry outline of an eye of nothingness appeared. Meow! A silver-gray thieving cat suddenly appeared in a corner of the mausoleum. Xiao! A mysterious, dark and translucent dagger flashed through the air, leaving a trail of shadow blade light behind it. That shadow blade penetrated the darkness of the night, and had a killing intent that could pierce through one's soul. Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger. The sunny young man exclaimed in a low voice and hurriedly reminded him. The reason for that was because the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was heading straight for Mengshi's eyes. Shadow Blade Assassination infused with a spatial secret technique. Nan Gongxing's eyes lit up. It was hard to imagine that the little cat only the size of a palm could unleash the spatial assassination shadow to such a level. Normal half-step Void Kings probably wouldn't be able to dodge this dagger. Mengshi's expression changed slightly as she felt a cold killing intent pierce through her soul, and her eyes started to hurt. Even though she was in the nightmare dimension, she wasn't willing to take this attack head-on. This was because the dagger was the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger, which was on par with the Qianquan sword and the Sky-Locking Bow. The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was a combination of the Tao of Assassination and the spatial secret technique. It could ignore defense to a certain degree, and even the Death Guard's Death Shadow body was defeated by it. Whoosh! Mengshi could faintly feel her nightmare dimension being pierced by the dagger. Open! Mengshi could only wave her long hair to block the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger. After all, she held the purple-scaled jade horn in one hand and controlled the Beast King. The other hand was used to restrict Nan Gongxing. The power of the nightmare dimension increased dramatically, and the battle power of the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was close to that of a king. The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was instantly drowned. Nan Gongxing sighed in his heart. However, in the next instant, his heart skipped a beat as he realized something. Wait! Mengshi exclaimed. She realized that the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger had disappeared into the nightmare dimension. An unfamiliar spatial aura seeped into his nightmare power. Poochie! The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger appeared out of nowhere and pierced through one of Mengshi's wrists. That was more accurate. The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger appeared from Mengshi's wrist before piercing through it. Spatial movement? Nan Gongxing was surprised. With his spatial talents, he could see how the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger appeared. Arg! Mengshi screamed as her wrist was pierced by the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger. What was even more coincidental was that the purple-scaled jade horn in her hand flew out. Damn it! Mengshi's expression changed dramatically as she realized something. The purple-scaled jade horn. This was the item she used to control the Beast King. However, before she could save it, a dark silver line flashed by her side. Meow meow. A silver-gray kitten seemed to have been waiting for a long time. It appeared where it was and grabbed the purple-scaled jade horn. This scene caused the other two monarch geniuses to be dumbfounded. "Stop!" Mengxi shouted, a trace of shock, anger, and ruthlessness appearing on her dreamlike face. The purple-scaled jade horn was her biggest trump card in the demigod Forgotten Garden. With the Beast King present, both Nan Gongsheng and the warm youth were wary of her. "Stay!" Mengxi circulated her nightmare bloodline to the maximum, and rays of dream light pierced through the little thieving cat's landing spot. However, the little thieving cat's agility and spatial techniques were incredible, and it dodged the rays of dream light in an unbelievable way. In terms of agility, no one could compare to the little thieving cat. Mengxi's expression became grim as she prepared to kill. Divine light of destruction, a dazzling beam of azure light that looked like countless tiny particles pierced through the nightmare dimension and struck Mengxi. "That's..." Mengxi's figure flashed. The nightmare dimension she had created was almost split in half by the divine light of destruction, and its power decreased dramatically. "It's him." Mengxi raised her head and saw a transparent blue eye coldly looking down at her. "Meow." The little thieving cat used this chance to merge into the darkness and disappear. "Don't let it run." With Mengxi's talent in the soul, she could barely sense where the little thieving cat had gone. What was unexpected was, the little thieving cat didn't run out of the tomb. "Meow meow." It gripped the purple-scaled jade horn and revealed a victorious smile. This smile was 70% cunning and 30% dirty. Not only did it not run, it just stood there. Nan Gongsheng and the warm youth paused. Although the little thieving cat was strong, it wasn't strong enough to fight against Mengxi. However, they understood in the next instant. Roar! A surge of magnificent power covered the little thieving cat's body. Shwa! The little thieving cat, under the effect of the magnificent power, was sucked into a purple-scaled horned beast. A beast king. The hearts of the three king geniuses shook. Meow meow. The little thieving cat gripped the purple-scaled jade horn and puffed out its chest as it sat proudly on the beast king. Its dancing appearance almost made Mengxi spit out a mouthful of blood. The beast king is being controlled by it. Nan Gongsheng and the warm youth were stunned. They didn't expect this to happen. Chapter 665. Demigod Forgotten Garden Central Tomb. Meow meow. The little thieving cat held the purple-scaled jade horn and grinned as it sat on the beast king, as if it had just won. "You thieving cat, why aren't you giving the horn back to me?" Mengxi trembled in anger, and her dreamy face was filled with anger and embarrassment. However, the little thieving cat had successfully controlled the beast king, so it didn't need to be scared of Mengxi anymore. It even made faces at this dreamy girl. Shwa! The eye of heaven in the sky revealed a mocking smile before disappearing. This Zhao Feng. The warm youth's heart dropped. He never would have thought that Zhao Feng, who seemed to have given up on the god blood, would appear and interfere with the fight between the three king geniuses. If the three king geniuses were balanced, then Zhao Feng wouldn't interfere. However, before, the situation was broken, and Nan Gongsheng was at a disadvantage. Mengxi and the warm youth teamed up before Zhao Feng appeared. This way, even if Mengxi and I teamed up, we won't have the absolute advantage. Furthermore, the Beast King has already fallen into Zhao Feng's hands. When Luan's expression kept on changing, he could faintly feel that Zhao Feng was in control of the situation, even though he wasn't involved. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, the demigod's blood left Nan Gongsheng's control and headed toward the depths of the central tomb. Chase! Nan Gongsheng turned into a silver figure and chased after it. At this moment, the Beast King was controlled by the little thieving cat, so even if Nan Gongsheng wasn't a match for Mengxi and Wen Luan, he didn't need to fear anything. Mengxi and Wen Luan looked at each other. Mengxi obviously wanted to work together and take the purple-scaled jade horn. Wen Luan hesitated. Shwa! A faintly discernible eye of void appeared above the little thieving cat's head once more, and it radiated a magnificent power. The expressions of the two changed dramatically. It was hard to imagine that the Eye of Void possessed king intent. With the help of the Eye of Space, it would be extremely difficult for the two to defeat the little thieving cat and the Beast King and take the purple-scaled jade horn. Meow! The little thieving cat controlled the Beast King and ignored them as it chased after the demigod's blood. Mengxi and Wenluan didn't act rashly, and their target was the demigod's blood. Not long after, they caught up to Nan Gongsheng. Buzz! Nan Gongsheng circulated his spatial technique and barely managed to control the demigod's blood. At this moment, the little thieving cat, Wenluan, and Mengxi all caught up. Without saying anything else, Wenluan chased after Nan Gongsheng. Zhaofeng, hurry up and help me! Nan Gongsheng exclaimed. He could determine the owner of the space transference eye. There seemed to be a response. Meow! The little thieving cat controlled the Beast King to attack Mengxi and Nan Gongsheng. Instantly, it was a chaotic battle on the field. The little thieving cat teamed up with Nan Gongsheng to deal with Mengxi and Wenluan. Putting aside who the demigod's blood belonged to, both sides had their own factions, so they had to work together to fight against the enemy. That Zhaofeng's space transference I might attack at any moment. The warm youth's heart tightened as he communicated with Mengxi. At this moment in time, Wenluan had a feeling that his biggest enemy wasn't Nan Gongsheng but Zhaofeng. As the saying went, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Zhaofeng wasn't actually involved, and his space transference I could attack at any moment. Maybe Zhaofeng's battle power wasn't comparable to the three king geniuses, but he was outside of the game and could control everything. But we can't give up on the demigod's blood so easily. How could Mengxi not know this? Once Nan Gongsheng obtained the demigod's blood, it would be extremely easy for him to become a true king. The three king geniuses were in a stalemate for the demigod's blood. At this moment in time, Zhaofeng was sitting in the library and peacefully reading a book. Not bad, not bad. One drop of the demigod's blood is enough to stall three king geniuses. A smile formed on Zhaofeng's face. Zhaofeng knew that half of the victory belonged to him now that he had successfully obtained control of the Beast King. Back when he left the mental cultivation palace, Zhaofeng already had a plan, and the core of it was to obtain the purple Qilin jade horn. After all, it was hard for Zhaofeng to fight against the three king geniuses head-on, and he was indeed weaker than them by half a level. However, after obtaining the purple Qilin jade horn, the situation started to favor Zhaofeng. He was no longer afraid of fighting against the three king geniuses head-on. Shua, shua, shua. Zhaofeng quickly flipped through the books. Since he had enough time, he focused on reading the contents. For some reason, Zhaofeng had the feeling that these books had a spirit of their own, as if they contained a wisp of profound mental energy. I'll be able to finish reading all the books in the library in a day or two. Zhaofeng was filled with anticipation. He soon finished the limit of 50 books per day. Most of Zhaofeng's attention was placed on the central tomb. The three king geniuses and the little thieving cat were locked in battle. In a short amount of time, any one of the four sides would find it hard to control the demigod's blood and take it away. One day later, the demigod's blood brought everyone to the depths of the central tomb. There was a strong yin ghost qi in the central tomb, and powerful wraiths would appear from time to time. Many of these wraiths had been kings when they were alive. Even though most of their power had disappeared after turning into wraiths, they were still able to cause some trouble for the three king geniuses. What was even more terrifying was that a small number of king wraiths had turned into wraiths ghost kings. Luckily, these wraiths were afraid of the demigod's blood and didn't dare to get too close. Otherwise, if a few vengeful spirit ghost kings pounced on them, coupled with a large number of powerful vengeful spirits, it might bring disaster to them. Meow meow. The little thieving cat controlled the king beast and bit the demigod's blood. Following the demigod's blood in the central tomb would lower the threat of the forbidden ground by 70%. As expected of the forbidden ground of the demigod Forgotten Garden, anyone below the void god realm will die if they enter. Even kings won't be able to escape unscathed. Zhaofeng felt his hairs stand on end through the little thieving cat's senses. The three king geniuses also felt a chill down their spines. However, they didn't have any path of retreat. Following the demigod's blood was the safest option, and it also represented the biggest reward. Nan Gongsheng, I have a suggestion. Mengxi suddenly spoke. What suggestion? Nan Gongxing said emotionlessly. Now that he had the little thieving cat's help, he wasn't scared of Meng Shi and Wen Luan teaming up at all. Let's team up and take the demigod's blood out of the central tomb. At that time, we can discuss how to split the demigod's blood. Meng Shi suggested. Nan Gongxing was slightly moved when he heard that. This central mausoleum was too sinister and terrifying. He did not know what sort of taboos and dangers lay within. But who's going to take care of the demigod's blood? Nan Gongxing said. At this moment in time, the two groups worked together to control the demigod's blood. However, there were powerful wraiths and wraiths ghost kings in the passages of the tomb. Everyone would be attacked and wouldn't be able to stand together. Facing the charge of the wraiths, everyone had to try and dodge. Meow meow. The little thieving cat immediately waved its paws and volunteered, as if it was making a promise. Nan Gongxing revealed a weird expression. No, the warm youth immediately rejected it. The little thieving cat had Zhao Feng behind it, and the eye of heaven couldn't be defended against. At this moment in time, the four of them started to disagree. If one of them took care of the demigod's blood, the other three wouldn't be at ease. Right at this moment, Shua, an eye of nothingness floated above their heads. The hearts of the three king geniuses shook. The warm youth and Meng Shi gritted their teeth in anger. Junior martial brother Zhao, what do you think? Nan Gongxing asked. They all looked up at the eye of transference with complicated expressions. Although Zhao Feng's battle power wasn't as strong as the strongest king geniuses, he was able to control the situation. Very simple. You can try to split the demigod's blood into 4. That's fair. A voice came from the eye of transference above his head. An aura of a king's magnificent power enveloped the area. Split into 4? Everyone's eyebrows furrowed. It wasn't that they hadn't thought about this before. However, the power contained within the demigod's blood was too terrifying. Firstly, the feasibility of splitting the god's blood into 4 was questionable. The god's blood was one drop, but it was one entity. Furthermore, the god's blood had its own consciousness. If they forcefully split the god's blood and caused it to explode, the power would be enough to kill a king. Hee. If I forcefully split the god's blood will struggle and wear away its consciousness. When the god's blood's resistance is at its weakest, I might be able to take it away with my spatial movement. Zhao Feng had his own plans. The others were doubtful, but they decided to give it a try. Meow meow. The little thieving cat threw the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger into the air, and it floated above the demigod's blood. Work together and merge your power into the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger to split the god's blood, Zhao Feng suggested. The three king geniuses faintly nodded their heads. The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was a sacred weapon of the Tao of assassination, and it could ignore defense to a certain degree. With the little thieving cat as the center, the three king geniuses poured their power into the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger. However, the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger changed before it even slashed down. The demigod's blood struggled in fear and released a bright flame that could make any king's expression change. Bam! 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 Nan Gongxing, Meng Shi, Wen Luan, and the Beast King were all sent flying. Among them, blood leaked out of Meng Shi's mouth as she glared at Zhao Feng with a cold expression. Their gazes toward Zhao Feng were unfriendly. If it wasn't for the fact that there was only an eye above their heads, they might have attacked Zhao Feng at the same time to vent their anger. It's a misunderstanding. Zhao Feng smiled. The demigod's blood was like a living being. It could feel fear. Even a cornered dog would jump over a wall. The demigod's blood would also have the determination to die together when it was being killed. Zhao Feng's suggestion to split them up had failed. Wen Luan felt like he had been tricked. Splitting the demigod's blood? This was a trap. It was easy to talk while standing there. The demigod's blood pushed away the four king geniuses, and its aura dimmed as it headed deeper into the tomb. Chase after it. They didn't have time to question Zhao Feng as they chased after the demigod's blood. The aura of the demigod's blood has dropped. Its consciousness will be worn away in 2 more days, and it will lose all resistance. Zhao Feng's eye of heaven disappeared from the air. His mental energy returned to the book room. There's only a few dozen books left. Zhao Feng reached out and found that the books didn't have any resistance. The limit of 2 to 3 days seemed to have decreased. He didn't think too much about it. In one breath, he finished reading the remaining dozens of books in the study room. Chapter 666. At this point in time, Zhao Feng finished reading all the books in the hidden book room. In his mind, the contents of the books were extremely clear. Zhao Feng was truly interested in the knowledge in the books, and finished reading them from beginning to end. This was the first outsider genius to complete this record in the history of the demigod Forgotten Garden. Zhao Feng slowly closed his eyes. He felt as if the contents of the books contained a hidden mental energy power. All the knowledge in the books merged into one. Suddenly, inside the study, all the books glowed faintly and began to burn. Zhao Feng's heart jumped. He had a feeling that these books weren't simple, and there might be some changes after reading them all. Whoosh! In an instant, the books in the library began to burn in the dim light, turning transparent bit by bit. Zhao Feng was wary and didn't dare to do anything rash. After all, this was the demigod Forgotten Garden. Nothing could be measured using normal means. After a few breaths later, the books finished burning and merged into a transparent light that resonated with the knowledge in Zhao Feng's mind. Shua! The transparent light disappeared and merged with the contents of the books in Zhao Feng's mind. Junior, I am the demigod Kuan Yun. You're very lucky to have passed the demigod's test. An arrogant voice sounded in Zhao Feng's mind. In his mind, a transparent light radiated a mysterious power that made Zhao Feng's consciousness feel pressured. Demigod Kuan Yin? Zhao Feng inspected the transparent light. If it was an ordinary genius that encountered such a fortuitous encounter, that genius would definitely be overwhelmed by the unexpected favor and be filled with fear and trepidation. After all, this transparent light was very likely a mental energy inheritance left behind by a demigod. However, Zhao Feng wasn't a newbie. He had fought with the Purple Saint partial soul back in the Purple Saint ruins. The Purple Knight Sacred Lord was a mystic light realm sacred lord, and the demigod Forgotten Garden was a demigod that had half a foot into the heavenly divine realm. Sir, are you really the owner of the Forgotten Garden, the legendary demigod? Zhao Feng asked. Insolent junior, how dare you doubt my identity? I am the remnant consciousness left behind by the demigod Kuan Yin. The faint light's voice deepened, as if it was slightly angry. In an instant, in the soul dimension, a terrifying psychic aura showed signs of collapsing the sky and splitting the earth. If it was an ordinary person, they would have peed their pants in fear and immediately kowtowed. Zhao Feng's expression did not change, but he pretended to be uneasy. Junior, if you're sincere and listen to my teachings, you'll have a chance to obtain a demigod's inheritance in the future. The entire demigod Forgotten Garden will be inherited by you. The voice slowed down a little, sounding somewhat aloof. Demigod inheritance. Inherit the entire demigod Forgotten Garden? Zhao Feng's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. Junior, are you willing to be a disciple of me, the demigod Kuan Yin? The faint, transparent light had a kind of arrogant confidence that looked down on the world. However, Zhao Feng snickered coldly after hearing these promises. A mere wisp of remnant consciousness dares to call itself a demigod. Hearing this, the transparent light couldn't help but shudder. Junior, do you believe that I can destroy your soul with just one thought? The faint, transparent light snickered coldly. In the next instant, in the soul dimension, the scene of heaven and earth collapsing appeared. Hee, you're just a wisp of remnant consciousness in the end. You tried to imitate the aura of a demigod, but you ended up like a dog. Zhao Feng laughed mockingly. He had a calm expression and didn't fear the powerful aura in the soul dimension. If it were a genius below the void god realm, they would most likely be tricked and worship the aura of a demigod. However, Zhao Feng was a genius that specialized in Soul Dao I bloodline techniques. These illusions couldn't fool him. His understanding of the Dao of the soul had already reached a profound level. As soon as the faint, transparent light appeared, Zhao Feng could tell that it was just a wisp of remnant consciousness. There was a difference between a remnant thought and a remnant soul. The purple saint partial spirit was a type of remnant soul, and it was much more complete than a remnant thought. A remnant thought was just a thought. A higher-level remnant thought would contain some of its owner's memories. Therefore, Zhao Feng wasn't scared of this demigod remnant thought. "Junior, you're courting death." The demigod remnant thought became angry, but its voice was filled with fear. My martial ancestor is a mystic light realm sacred lord. You think you can trick me with just this?" Zhao Feng snickered coldly. The next instant, the terrifying eye bloodline aura from the god's spiritual eye crushed over and crushed the illusion created by the demigod remnant thought. "Junior, stop right now. You win." The faint, transparent light became even dimmer under the pressure of Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye. It was like a candle in the wind. The demigod remnant thought cursed in its heart. The human it was in specialized in the Tao of the soul, and his eye bloodline was extremely strong. The origin of his eye bloodline probably wasn't simple. Furthermore, the martial ancestor of a mystic light realm sacred lord that Zhao Feng mentioned made it feel guilty. Zhao Feng snickered coldly and retracted the eye bloodline aura of the god's spiritual eye. If it weren't for the fact that he specialized in the Tao of the soul and had the god's spiritual eye, he might have been tricked by the demigod remnant thought. Luckily, Zhao Feng was calm enough to see through the demigod remnant thought's facade. Demigod remnant thought, what's your purpose in living here? How much do you know about the demigod forgotten garden? Zhao Feng started to interrogate it. The demigod remnant thought was angry and humiliated, but there was nothing it could do. It originally wanted to use this human genius to threaten him, but it ended up being captured instead. The demigod master's soul was destroyed by the god Tribulation long ago, and only a few remnant thoughts were left in the corners of the demigod forgotten garden. I'm one of them. The demigod remnant thought didn't dare to hide anything. This youth was calm and had a strong soul eye bloodline technique. He also had a mystic light realm elder behind him, so he couldn't hide his lies for long. A while later, Zhao Feng understood what had happened. After a demigod died, almost all of their souls were destroyed, and only some remnant thoughts were left behind. This demigod remnant thought was stored in the hidden room. This was because the demigod often stayed in the hidden room when he was alive, and his memories and remnant thoughts were formed here. After reading all the books in the hidden room, Zhao Feng activated the demigod remnant thought that had almost been destroyed. After understanding the truth, Zhao Feng couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. This demigod remnant thought didn't seem to be very useful, and had no control over the demigod forgotten garden. Junior, don't underestimate me. As a demigod remnant thought, I know Master and the demigod forgotten garden very well. Most importantly, there's a small chance that I can recover my demigod true body. The demigod remnant thought quickly said. It was extremely weak right now, and it was worried that Zhao Feng wouldn't be able to use it anymore. Recover your demigod true body? Zhao Feng was slightly surprised when he heard that. After all, what appeared in front of him was only a demigod remnant thought. The purple saint partial spirit's soul state was slightly more complete, but it couldn't return to its original body. As long as I can obtain the demigod's blood, there's a chance for me to revive from a single drop of blood. The demigod remnant thought said proudly. Revive from a single drop of blood? Zhao Feng had heard of this legendary ability before, and the books in the hidden room had information about it. In theory, with a drop of the demigod's blood and the demigod remnant thought, one could indeed revive from a single drop of blood, but the chance of returning to the peak demigod level was extremely low. Hehe, you actually know about the demigod's blood? But even if I obtain the demigod's blood, I'll still use it to increase my strength. Zhao Feng snickered. This was because the demigod remnant thought understood some information when he used it to read the books. You're wasting God's gift. Once you succeed in reviving from a single drop of blood, you'll be able to activate more of the demigod's abilities, including his inherited memories. The demigod remnant thought said angrily. Zhao Feng didn't reply and started to think. Without a doubt, the value of reviving a demigod from a single drop of blood was far greater than a single drop of the demigod's blood. Simply put, It was a demigod revival plan. However, there was a certain amount of risk involved. Zhao Feng wasn't sure what to do. Furthermore, he hadn't even gotten the demigod's blood yet. Just stay here. Zhao Feng's consciousness retracted from his mind. Wait, the demigod remnant thought exclaimed. I'm just a wisp of remnant thought, and it's already incredible that I can reform. If you don't do anything, I'll only be able to live for a few more days. In his mind, the faint light was extremely dim, as if it could dissipate at any moment. Zhao Feng thought for a while, and circulated a wisp of water, to carefully cover the demigod remnant thought. Zhao Feng's eye bloodline power was of the water element, and it had the ability to heal. Under the nourishment of the watery eye power, the ball of faint light stabilized a little. Next, Zhao Feng took out a dark green gourd. Green spiritual gourd. The demigod remnant thought was overjoyed and entered the green spiritual gourd. The green spiritual gourd was more suitable for soul remnant thoughts, and it could even nourish them. Legends said that some King Martial Emperor's soul remnant intents were stored in the green spiritual gourd and were reborn many years later. The demigod remnant thought stayed in Zhao Feng's mind, and it wasn't impossible with the nourishment of the water. However, if Zhao Feng circulated his eye bloodline power on a large scale, or was attacked by the soul, it would affect the demigod remnant thought. I still have mermaid tears, soul-gathering spirit grass, and other soul Dao treasures here, Zhao Feng said. Mermaid tears? Soul-gathering spirit grass? Quick, this can help consolidate my soul remnant thought, and even form a soul remnant. The demigod remnant thought was impatient. There's no free lunch in this world. You can't help me at all right now, so why should I help you? Unless, Zhao Feng said. Unless you become my master. Zhao Feng's face didn't turn red, and his heart didn't jump. Become your master? That's impossible. The demigod remnant thought's roar sounded from within the gourd. Then you can stay here forever. Even if you obtain the demigod's blood, you won't be able to be reborn, Zhao Feng said. After saying this, he got up and prepared to leave the library. As soon as he stepped out of the library, human, you win. The demigod remnant thought's voice seemed to be filled with helplessness as he gritted his teeth. Zhao Feng nodded his head in satisfaction and placed a small mermaid tear into the green spiritual gourd. The demigod remnant thought absorbed the power of the mermaid tear hungrily. In just an instant, the aura of the demigod remnant thought became purer, and the undulation of soul power became stronger. Master, how confident are you in obtaining the demigod's blood? The demigod remnant thought asked after absorbing the mermaid tear. Hard to say. The demigod's blood has entered the central tomb of the messy graveyard. Zhao Feng wasn't sure. The central tomb? You mean the demigod tomb? The demigod remnant thought was stunned. Chapter 667. Demigod Tomb? Only now did Zhao Feng know the name of the tomb. It was obvious that this was where the demigod was buried. The demigod partial thought indeed knew more about the situation in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Danger and fortune exist together. The demigod's corpse is buried in the demigod tomb. Although there's no life force in it, it can't be revived. The demigod partial thought said mysteriously. Zhao Feng knew that the demigod's death was mainly due to the god tribulation. If they died to the god tribulation, it was already a miracle that their corpse wasn't destroyed. What do you know about the demigod tomb? Zhao Feng asked. If he was familiar with the demigod tomb, then Zhao Feng's plan and the little thieving cat's actions would be more effective. Because I ate the mermaid tear, I recovered some of my memories. I know a bit about the map of the demigod tomb. The demigod partial thought soon sent some information to Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng nodded his head and gave the demigod partial thought another mermaid tear as a reward. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed after reading through the information. From the looks of it, apart from some vengeful spirits and some puppets guarding the tomb, there wasn't any fortune in the demigod tomb. Zhao Feng's expression suddenly changed as he was about to speak. His attention was attracted by the situation in the demigod tomb. Within the passage of the tomb, Wu Boom, a scarlet-purple vengeful spirit that was dozens of feet tall appeared in the form of a valiant man. Flames surged around it as it stood proudly in the air. Its terrifying aura was almost tangible as it crushed down on the void. An emperor vengeful spirit. The expressions of Nan Gongsheng, Meng Shi and company changed dramatically. Run! This emperor-level vengeful spirit isn't something we can deal with. When Luan revealed a look of panic for the first time, the figure of the male vengeful spirit gave off the aura of an emperor, and it made their souls tremble. Whoosh! The demigod's blood used this chance to enter the depths of the tomb. At this moment, Nan Gongsheng, Meng Shi, Wen Luan, and the little thieving cat faced a life-and-death situation. Shua! A transparent blue eye of nothingness appeared above the little thieving cat's head. Zhao Feng had already made his preparations. If it was really dangerous, he would use spatial movement to save the little thieving cat. After being together for a long time, the relationship between Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat surpassed that of normal pets. Even if I give up on the demigod's blood, I can't let the little thieving cat fall into a life-and-death situation. Zhao Feng made up his mind. He also gave the map of the demigod tomb to the little thieving cat. Meow. When the little thieving cat received the information, it grinned and grabbed the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger and the purple-scaled jade horn before burrowing into the Beast King's body. In this way, most of the pressure was resisted by the King Beast and protected by the King's magnificent power. It could be said that the little thieving cat was the safest of the group. Boom! The emperor-level vengeful spirit flew over. The geniuses' hearts and souls shook, and their blood and chi churned as they endured the invisible pressure. Even the Beast King seemed to be struggling and slowed down. Meow meow. The little thieving cat grinned and controlled the Beast King to burrow toward an ancient totem on the wall. Smash into a wall? Nan Gongsheng and company thought that the little thieving cat had gone crazy from fear when they saw its actions. However, the next scene made their jaws drop. Crack. The ancient totem on the wall suddenly opened a secret passage, and the Beast King that the little thieving cat was in entered. Follow. Nan Gongsheng and company didn't care about the demigod's blood anymore. Even if the three of them teamed up, they still wouldn't be able to fight against an emperor-level vengeful spirit. Boom! The emperor-level vengeful spirit smashed into the passage, but due to its size, it was bounced back. The materials used to construct the demigod tomb were extremely unique. Even normal vengeful spirits would find it hard to pass through the wall. Even then, the terrifying magnificent power passed through the physical world and injured Nan Gongsheng and company behind him. The little thieving cat was at the very front, and it was hidden inside the Beast King, so it wasn't affected. Nan Gongsheng and company let out a long breath. The emperor-level vengeful spirit didn't chase after them. Meow meow. The little thieving cat returned to the Beast King and led the way with its head held high. How does this cat know the layout of the tomb so well? Meng Shi and Wen Luan looked at each other. Follow the cat closely. The hearts of the three shook. They had lost their way in the forbidden area of the tomb, and their lives were closely tied to this cat. The little thieving cat controlled the Beast King to take many turns in the passage. At a certain moment, the Beast King leaped out of the secret passage and entered an even darker underground chamber. The underground chamber was scorched black. After tens of thousands of years, this place still gave off an aura that made all gods and demons fear. There wasn't a single vengeful spirit within 100 yards of the underground chamber. Not even an emperor-level vengeful spirit. The chamber was empty except for a charred corpse that was as black as ink. The corpse didn't look like a human anymore. It was like a pile of black charcoal, and it even had some luster to it. The three king geniuses stared at the charred corpse and felt a forbidden aura that could shake the heavens. That forbidden aura, even if there was only a trace left, was enough to make all gods and ghosts tremble in fear. It was an instinctive fear. Pressure. The three king geniuses couldn't even breathe. The Beast King's eyes were filled with fear as it trembled in front of the scorched corpse. This corpse doesn't have any aura of life, soul power, or true yuan, but it's still able to radiate such a terrifying aura. The chamber was dead silent. Even the outside of the chamber was dead silent. No vengeful spirits approached. This corpse might very well be the body of a demigod. This forbidden aura obviously doesn't come from the corpse itself. The eyes of the three king geniuses twinkled as they guessed. Shua. The eye of emptiness appeared in the chamber. Zhao Feng felt a forbidden aura penetrate his body. The source of this aura seemed to be the bane of all things in the universe. The body of a demigod has been completely destroyed. This aura doesn't come from the upper body. Zhao Feng's heart shook. He was unable to block the pressure from the forbidden aura, even though he had traveled through space. That's the power of the god Tribulation. The demigod Partial Thought's voice suddenly sounded. The power of the god Tribulation. Zhao Feng's heart shook. No wonder the body of a demigod didn't even look like a human. It had almost fallen apart, and didn't have any aura of life. The demigod's true body died to the god Tribulation, and the coffin wasn't even set up properly. The demigod Partial Thought's voice was slightly sorrowful. After all, it was a partial thought that came from the demigod's soul consciousness. This body has been completely destroyed, so it doesn't have much value. However, the remaining power of the god Tribulation is the most valuable thing. It'll help you cultivate the power of lightning within your body. The demigod Partial Thought said. The power of the god Tribulation. Zhao Feng's heart jumped. The power of the god Tribulation could even kill a demigod, and make even gods fear it. From this, one could see how valuable this power was. Most likely, even some mystic light realm sacred lords and demigods would be interested in the remnant power of god Tribulation in the corpse. Normal mystic light realm sacred lords would most likely be killed by the god Tribulation when trying to break through to the heavenly divine realm. However, the demigod's true body used his body to absorb a large amount of the god Tribulation's power, and his body wasn't destroyed. From this, one could see that his strength was only a sliver away from the heavenly divine realm. The demigod Partial Thought sighed. At this point, Zhao Feng understood even more just how precious these bodies that had absorbed god Tribulation energy were. Experts that could break through to the heavenly divine realm were extremely rare. Experts that could survive the god Tribulation and not destroy their bodies were even less than 1 in 10. From a certain perspective, this body that had endured the god Tribulation might be the most valuable treasure in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Even the demigod's blood might not be as valuable as the god Tribulation's body. This was because the demigod's blood wasn't very useful to those at the mystic light realm. On the other hand, the god Tribulation's body was extremely valuable even to mystic light realm sacred lords and demigods. The power of the god Tribulation is mostly based on divine lightning, so this god Tribulation's body is very useful to me. Zhao Feng was extremely excited. Meow. The little thieving cat sat on the Beast King and gripped the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger as it slowly approached the black corpse. Nan Gongxing and company weren't dumb. They could guess where this body came from. After all, it wasn't a big secret that the demigod had died to the god Tribulation. The body is big anyway. Let's split it together. Zhao Feng said. It was extremely difficult to split the god Tribulation's body with just one person's strength. Even kings would be suppressed by the god Tribulation corpse with every move. Sure. The three king geniuses didn't object. The four discussed and decided to use the little thieving cat's Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger as the core to cut the black corpse. Wang. The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger gathered energy from all directions and turned into a sharp blade that was as cold as winter as it slashed at the charred corpse. Ding! When the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger slashed onto the black corpse, its power was weakened by more than 90% by the god Tribulation's power. On the charred black corpse, there was only a tiny trace that could not be detected. The expressions of the three king geniuses were slightly ugly. If this continued, it would probably take a day or two to split the black corpse. However, thinking about the value of the god Tribulation's body, the three king geniuses didn't retreat. Putting aside a day or two, it was worth it even if it took a month or two. Ding! Ding! The four of them would team up and use the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger to slash at the black corpse every 4 to 5 breaths. The combined power of the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was enough to kill weaker kings. Shua. Zhao Feng's Eye of Heaven disappeared from the tomb. However, the Eye of Heaven didn't disappear from the demigod tomb. Soon later, Zhao Feng's eye of heaven found where the demigod's blood was hiding. The consciousness of the demigod's blood was extremely weak, but it suddenly sensed the existence of the eye of heaven and released a golden light. Get ready to collect the god blood, Zhao Feng said to the demigod partial thought. Spatial movement. A ripple of eye bloodline power covered the demigod's blood, and the outline of a whirlpool appeared. Wang, the demigod's blood started to struggle, but it suddenly stopped. This was because a familiar mental energy aura appeared from the ripple of eye bloodline power. Shua. The god blood with a golden luster was swallowed by the outline of the vortex and disappeared. The demigod's blood has been obtained. The eye of heaven revealed a look of joy as it disappeared. Chapter 668. Demigod Forgotten Garden Book Room. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face. Kuan Yun partial thought, you're not completely useless. Kuan Yun partial thought was the name Zhao Feng gave the demigod partial thought. This was because the owner of the demigod Forgotten Garden was called Kuan Yun. Within the dimension of his left eye, a faint golden drop of blood floated in the pitch-black area. It was the demigod's blood essence. Obtaining the demigod's blood was easier than he had imagined. The god's blood had its own consciousness, and it respected the mental energy aura of the demigod's owner. The Kuan Yin partial thought was split off from the demigod's destroyed soul, so it obviously had the aura of a demigod. The Kuan Yin partial thought had the urge to spit out blood when it heard Zhao Feng say that it was completely useless. The demigod partial thought was completely useless in Zhao Feng's eyes. Although the Kuan Yin partial thought was far from a partial soul, it still had its own thoughts and a small portion of its memories. Master, now that you've obtained the demigod's blood, I can be reborn from a single drop of blood. The Kuan Yin partial thought said expectantly. When one reached the demigod level, they could be reborn from a single drop of blood, even if their physical body was destroyed. Of course, the prerequisite was that at least a wisp of mental energy remained. And now, the Kuan Yin partial thought, and the demigod's blood obviously fulfilled this condition. The demigod's blood was blood essence. The Kuan Yin partial thought wasn't a normal wisp of mental energy either. It had its own thoughts and memories, and it was close to the level of a partial soul. Rebirth from a single drop of blood is a heaven-defying technique of the legends. Zhao Feng also looked forward to it. However, this matter was very important, so he wouldn't do it easily. Firstly, the power contained within the demigod's blood was too terrifying. Who could predict how much the demigod Kuan Yun's strength would increase after being reborn from a single drop of blood? We'll discuss this after we leave the demigod Forgotten Garden, Zhao Feng answered. An idea quickly formed in his mind. One thing was certain, Zhao Feng wouldn't use all the power of the demigod's blood on rebirth. He was going to use the power of the divine blood as well. Not only could he strengthen himself, but he could also weaken the power of the demigod Kuan Yin after his rebirth. The demigod Forgotten Garden will close in 2.5 days. Zhao Feng pondered. For the rest of the time, Zhao Feng's focus was no longer on the plan for rare materials and treasures. Death pursuit. It's still unknown who will emerge victorious. Zhao Feng's expression was cold as he stared in the direction of the demigod's tomb. At the same time, in the chamber of the demigod's tomb, the three king geniuses and the little thieving cat teamed up to cut the charred black corpse. When Luan suddenly felt a chill, the legendary bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races gave him a sharp sense of danger. Whoosh! The eye of the void was faintly discernible in the tomb, revealing a faint smile. The three king geniuses were used to the existence of the eye of heaven. However, the expression of the space transference, I made them feel as if they had fallen into a passive state. The three of them probably wouldn't have thought that Zhao Feng would successfully obtain the demigod's blood. Zhao Feng would try his best to hide the fact that he had obtained the demigod's blood, and he would also start the demigod revival plan. If the world knew about this secret, the entire true martial sacred land would be shaken. Reviving a demigod was a bold and terrifying idea. I only want the head of the demigod's body. The eye of heaven floated in the air and said in an emotionless tone. The reason why he wanted the head was because when the demigod fought against the god Tribulation, the head would be hit the most. Zhao Feng had obtained this information from the Kuan-Yin partial thought. Why do you have priority? Mengshi snickered coldly. These people didn't think too much about it. Mengshi was purely dissatisfied with Zhao Feng's hostility. It was this man who had stolen the trump card that her master had prepared for her. Through this trump card, Zhao Feng had turned the tables and reached a level comparable to the three king geniuses. Without the little thieving cat's guidance, you wouldn't have been able to safely enter this place. Furthermore, I've read all the books in the library and know more about the demigod's tomb than you do. Zhao Feng said confidently. Demigod's tomb? The three king geniuses looked at each other. From all the signs, it seemed that Zhao Feng did indeed know more about the central tomb and the entire demigod Forgotten Garden. Furthermore, Zhao Feng had actually finished reading all the books in the hidden library. It sounded rather idiotic, but it made sense that Zhao Feng would be touched by some sort of fortune. It's just a head. Nan Gongxing shrugged his shoulders. He was on the same side as Zhao Feng right now. Finally, the three king geniuses allowed Zhao Feng to choose the demigod's head first. But Zhao Feng, since you know the demigod's tomb, you need to take us out of here safely. Mengshi requested. Everyone had lost their way in the depths of the demigod's tomb. It would be extremely dangerous to leave the demigod Forgotten Garden after splitting the corpse. That's right. The eye of heaven revealed a faint smile. Zhao Feng snickered coldly in his heart. In reality, as long as he held the parts of the demigod's corpse, the aura of the demigod's power would be enough to force back all the vengeful spirits in the tomb. However, the three king geniuses were focused on splitting the corpse and didn't think about this. Time passed by quickly. 1 or 2 days passed by quickly. The demigod's corpse was split up. Zhao Feng chose the demigod's head and had the little thieving cat take it. When Luan took the legs, Mengshi took the arms. The torso was taken by Nan Gongxing. The demigod Forgotten Garden will close in 1 day. Nan Gongxing said. The last day. When Luan and Mengshi looked at each other. We just need to hold the parts of the demigod's corpse to force back the vengeful spirits in the tomb. When Luan messaged. At this moment in time, the three king geniuses all thought of this after obtaining the parts of the demigod's corpse. Once they had this method, the three king geniuses wouldn't rely too much on Zhao Feng's knowledge of the demigod's tomb. Meow. The little thieving cat sat on the beast king and set off first. Follow. Mengshi and Wen Luan followed the little thieving cat. Nan Gongxing thought for a while and followed closely behind. Suddenly, the little thieving cat became the leader of the group. Since Zhao Feng has information about the demigod's tomb, he definitely won't give up on the demigod's blood. Furthermore, Zhao Feng's Eye of Heaven has a huge advantage in terms of senses. He might have found the location of the demigod's blood already. The three king geniuses all had their own plans. All in all, they had to follow the little thieving cat. Meow. The little thieving cat glanced at the three king geniuses with a playful and mocking expression. However, under Zhao Feng's orders, the little thieving cat still had to search the demigod's tomb. Shua. The Eye of Heaven would occasionally appear, as if it was cooperating with the little thieving cat's search. The little thieving cat tried to escape the three king geniuses, but it failed. Zhao Feng, did you find the demigod's blood or not? Nan Gongxing messaged. The demigod's tomb is too complicated. The demigod's blood is too small, and I don't know where it's hiding. Zhao Feng replied. Although he said that, Zhao Feng still told the little thieving cat to search for the demigod's blood, as if it was determined to find it. Although Mengshi and Wen Luan were suspicious, they didn't expect Zhao Feng to find the demigod's blood so easily. They obviously met some vengeful spirits in the process. However, once they took out the parts of the demigod's corpse, they would be able to scare away all kinds of vengeful spirits. However, there were exceptions. Although some emperor vengeful spirits were wary of the demigod's corpse and wouldn't approach it, they would use their power to attack from afar. The three king geniuses fought against the emperor vengeful spirits and were in a ruffled state. They continued to search while running away. Unknowingly, the little thieving cat brought them to the entrance of the tomb. Meow meow. The little thieving cat sat on the Beast King and left the demigod's tomb with a dejected expression. The three king geniuses could only give up on the demigod's blood with disappointment and helplessness. The demigod's blood was too small. Once they lost track of it, it would be like finding a needle in a haystack. Furthermore, the demigod's tomb was extremely dangerous. If it weren't for the parts of the demigod's corpse, the three king geniuses might have already died. At the entrance of the tomb, when Luan's eyes twinkled coldly as he looked in the direction the little thieving cat left, the warm youth and Mengshi stood together and started to talk in secret. No problem, I'll help you deal with that brat. A cold light appeared on Mengshi's beautiful face. She was extremely hostile towards Zhao Feng, both in private and in public. In private, Mengshi hated Zhao Feng for stealing the purple scale jade horn. In public, Zhao Feng was a rising bloodline genius of the mystic True Sacred clan, and he was a dark horse in the demigod Forgotten Garden. From dominating the purple smoke lake to coming here, taking the sky-locking bow, and finally fighting against the three king geniuses. All of this proved how terrifying this genius was. Of course, she didn't know that Zhao Feng had obtained the demigod's blood. Otherwise, that wouldn't be the evaluation of a dark horse, but the biggest winner. I can sense where that brat is. Even if there's only one day left, it's enough to kill him. When Luan's warm smile contained a hint of coldness, just as the two were planning their next move, meow, the little thieving cat suddenly stopped on the purple-scaled beast, and its eyes became cold and dignified. Boom! The king beast gave off a majestic aura that pressed down on the warm young man. The heart of the warm youth jumped. Roar! The Beast King charged toward the warm youth. This Beast King only had 70% of its battle power, so the warm youth obviously wasn't scared. However, in the next instant, his expression changed dramatically. Soul Lock, a translucent blue eye of nothingness floated above the two's heads. When Luan's body froze, wisps of transparent purple lightning bound his soul. This was a control-type soul eye bloodline technique that Zhao Feng had created using the Dark Eye Secret technique as the foundation. Soul Lock targeted the target's soul. Open! When Luan's Heaven-Sun Battle Race bloodline was activated, and a golden light radiated from his body, making him seem like a golden god of war. However, in the Eye of Heaven state, Zhao Feng had king intent, and his soul lock was able to restrict anyone below the void god realm. When Luan struggled, and the purple lightning chains binding his soul started to shake, but they weren't broken in a short amount of time. Nightmare Dimension, Mengshi obviously wouldn't just stand there and watch. She used her soul bloodline to try and break free from Zhao Feng's soul lock. However, right at this moment Shua, a profound silver phantom, accompanied by a wisp of spatial fluctuation, swept to the side of the sunny youth. Nan Gongsheng. When Luan and Mengshi's expressions changed dramatically. Mystic Spatial Rend. Nan Gongsheng's expression was cold as he slashed a silver streak of light toward the warm youth. Chapter 669. In a short instant, the series of changes caught the warm youth and Mengshi off guard, and they exclaimed in shock. The Beast King, the Eye of Heaven, and Nan Gongsheng attacked Wen Luan at almost the same time. Just a moment ago, the warm youth and Mengshi were discussing how to kill Zhao Feng. The eye of transference in the air revealed a mocking smile. How could Zhao Feng not guess the hostility and killing intent the warm youth and Mengshi had for him? Being on the defensive wasn't Zhao Feng's style. The biggest advantage the god's spiritual eye gave him was his control. The Eye of Heaven restricted the three king geniuses, while Zhao Feng was on a higher level. The one who attacked first had the advantage, and the one who attacked later would suffer. Zhao Feng wasn't stupid enough to wait for the warm youth and Mengshi to attack him. Before leaving the tomb, Zhao Feng had successfully convinced Nan Gongsheng to help him. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The warm youth was restricted by Zhao Feng's soul shackle. The Beast King and Nan Gongsheng's attacks arrived at the same time. Crack! Nan Gongsheng's mystic spatial rend landed on the warm youth's neck. A crack appeared on the warm youth's golden skin, and blood started to seep out. Crack! Boom! The Beast King charged toward Wen Luan. But it was stopped by Meng Shi. Only a few shockwaves landed on the warm youth. The first round of attacks. The warm youth was lightly injured, but he managed to survive. However, he wasn't out of danger yet. Nan Gongxing alone was enough to make him suffer. The Eye of Heaven radiated the aura of King Intent and locked down Zhao Fu's soul. Ding! A blade of light slashed onto the warm youth's face and left behind a line of blood. The Heaven-Sun battle race was ranked in the top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races, and their offense and defense had reached a perfect level. With the protection of the Heaven-Sun battle race bloodline, Nan Gongxing and the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger weren't able to critically injure him. Nightmare Dimension. A hazy layer of dreamlight appeared around Meng Shi, enveloping everyone in the battlefield. In the dreamlight, everyone felt as if they were in an endless deep sea, surrounded by torrential waves. The attack speed of Nan Gongxing and the Beast King was restricted. The scene from the deep sea of the dream realm permeated into reality. If everyone was in the deep sea, then the defending side would obviously be more powerful. As expected of the 10,000 ancient races, with two bloodlines working together, killing one of them will be extremely difficult. Zhao Feng looked down with his Eye of Heaven and sighed in his heart. He used all of his eye bloodline power to restrict Wen Luan's movements. Universe Sword. Nan Gongxing roared. As he swung the sacred sword of inheritance, the surrounding space seemed to tremble. The nightmare space was also affected. The Cosmos sword transformed into a dazzling sword light and slashed at the young man. Puff! Wen Luan's figure swayed, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The surface of his golden skin dimmed a little. Good job. Zhao Feng was overjoyed. Nan Gongxing was indeed worthy of being one of the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land. Without a doubt, Nan Gongxing's overall battle power was ranked first amongst the geniuses. Meng Shi and Wen Luan could only hold their ground against him. Blood Sun battles the heavens. Wen Luan roared as the Heaven-Sun battle race bloodline within his body started to burn. In that instant, Wen Luan's mental energy and true yuan rose to a whole new level. Wang, within the resplendent golden light, an illusory heavenly blood sun appeared above Wen Luan's head, and the boundless energy of heaven and earth turned into his battle prowess. Not good. Zhao Feng's soul eye bloodline technique felt extremely pressured. Wen Luan's battle power doubled or tripled in that instant. The heavenly sun blood sun above his head raised his battle power to the level of a true king. At this moment in time, even a true king would be moved if he were to descend. Luckily, the bloodline secret technique only increased Wen Luan's battle power. The increase in his soul was only secondary. However, even then, Zhao Feng's soul shackles felt extremely strained. Boom! The Qianquan sword and Wen Luan's golden fist clashed together, and a terrifying wave of air created hundreds of holes within half a mile. Oh my God! The geniuses of the sacred land, near the messy graveyard, couldn't help but feel their hearts jump when they saw this. Tung! Nan Gongxing's figure floated back a few yards, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. Meng Shi's nightmare dimension restricted his attack speed. Zhao Feng, it'll be very difficult to kill Wen Luan, with these two 10,000 ancient races bloodlines teaming up. Nan Gongxing messaged. Wen Luan's battle power, offense and defense had all been raised to the limit. The increase in battle power won't last for long. Let's waste some time. Zhao Feng said in a deep tone, but he didn't lose his cool. Open! The heavenly sun blood sun above Wen Luan's head surged with power that increased his mental energy and battle power. The dark purple chains of lightning around him started to shake and dim. Prepare for the next round of attacks. Zhao Feng's Eye of Heaven floated in the air and messaged. In the next instant, crack! The dark purple chains of lightning around Wen Luan shattered and turned into nothingness. Joy appeared on his face, and he was about to attack. However, as soon as he moved, his head started to hurt. Void Space Eye Slash. A 3-inch-long blade of lightning flashed with scarlet light as it pierced through Wen Luan's head. Whoosh! The Void Space Eye Slash pierced through Wen Luan's head, and a beam of blood-colored light shot out. What? Meng Shi's expression changed dramatically. Woo! Wen Luan's body froze as blood seeped out of his head, but it was quickly healed by a layer of golden light. However, the void space ice contained the intent of the scarlet destruction wind lightning, and it continued to burn after piercing through his head. Mystic spatial rend. Nan Gongxing paused for a moment as the silver light in his hand stabbed into the wound on Wen Luan's head. Whoosh! A blood-colored light spread through Wen Luan's golden-skinned head, and the silver light pierced half a foot into it. This was all thanks to Zhao Feng's void space ice. It was a perfect combination of forces from the inside and outside. It wasn't over yet. Swoosh! A dark dagger slashed into the back of Wen Luan's head. This was the little thieving cat's shadow kill imperial dagger. As such, the void space ice was the center of Wen Luan's head, and both ends of his head were stabbed. Ah! The sunny young man let out a shrill scream, and his body was on the verge of collapse. Mengshi was shaken by this scene. Her body stiffened, and her eyes were filled with terror. Imagine, if such a combination of attacks were to land on her, it would be difficult for her to escape. Boom! The golden light that was as dazzling as the sun exploded, leaving behind a hole with a diameter of 1,000 feet. Such destructive power was unimaginable for the demigod Forgotten Garden. Nan Gongxing and the little thieving cat raised their heads, and saw the warm youth turn into a streak of golden light and run away. Zhao Feng, I'm going to tear you into 10,000 pieces. The warm youth's handsome face twisted as he charged toward Zhao Feng. Because of the Eye of Death, he could sense where Zhao Feng was. Shua! An eye of void appeared in the sky. Through the eye of heaven, Zhao Feng found that the wound on the warm youth's head hadn't healed yet. This damage is enough to kill a half-step void god realm, no less than 10 times. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. The top 100 bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races couldn't be judged by normal standards. Ice Soul Shooting Line. A cold beam of transparent light descended from the sky and pierced through the warm youth's body. The warm youth's figure shook. Before he could react, divine light of destruction. A beam of dazzling cyan light, which was as sharp as countless tiny particles, struck the heaven sun blood sun above the young man's head. Boom! The heaven blood sun above Wen Luan's head became unstable, and its light dimmed a little. Through the divine light of destruction, Zhao Feng weakened the power of Wen Luan's secret technique. Right at this moment, Nan Gongxing used a spatial movement technique, and a silver figure appeared with the Qianquan sword and slashed toward the wound on Wen Luan's head. Mengshi was temporarily stalled by the little thieving cat and the Beast King. Very good, Mengshi and Wen Luan have split up. Zhao Feng revealed a joyful expression. Luckily, he had a powerful ally like Nan Gongxing. In the air of the demonic Forgotten Garden, a battle that spanned across space shook the soul to the core. The geniuses of the sacred grounds below were all shocked. No matter how Wen Luan tried to dodge, he couldn't escape from Nan Gongxing and the Eye of Heaven. Nan Gongxing had spatial talent and spatial techniques, so he was able to keep up with the warm youth. On the other hand, the Eye of Heaven was able to see even more than before. At this moment, Wen Luan was being beaten up. Nan Gongxing and the Eye of Heaven are teaming up. What a battle across space. Why does that Eye of Heaven look like junior martial brother Zhao's eye? The geniuses of the mystic true sacred clan saw more clues. Boom! Boom! The warm youth was covered in injuries, but he wasn't willing to give up. However, he was stubborn and unyielding. His face was filled with murderous intent as he charged in the direction of the library. For hours later, the warm youth finally reached the courtyard where the hidden book room was. At this moment in time, Zhao Feng and Wen Luan were dozens of yards away from each other. Void space ice. The meter-long blade pierced through Wen Luan's brain once again. Shua! Blood splattered as Wen Luan's golden skin cracked open once more, and the golden light around him dimmed by more than half. Zhao Feng. Wen Luan's bloodied body swayed as he walked toward the hidden book room. Everyone nearby could see that the warm youth was at the end of his tether. Nan Gongxing's eyebrows furrowed, but he didn't attack anymore. He was prideful, and didn't want to gang up on a genius of the same generation that was on the verge of death. Zhao Feng, even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Wen Luan's true yuan started to burn, and a golden sun appeared behind him, as he bathed in a layer of golden flames. Not good. Nan Gongxing's expression changed dramatically. It was obvious that when Luan wanted to drag him down with him, Shua, Nan Gongxing immediately used a spatial movement technique and retreated. The instant he retreated, he saw a giant blood-colored sun clash with Wen Luan, who was in a ball of golden flames, and explode, engulfing the entire hidden book room. Boom! The hidden book room exploded, and was engulfed by limitless golden flames. Even kings would be turned to ashes by this forbidden power. The entire hidden book room was flattened. This was the first time a building had been completely destroyed since the opening of the Forgotten Garden. Wah! Nan Gongxing was slightly affected, and he spat out a mouthful of blood in the air before landing on the ground. He couldn't imagine what would happen to Zhao Feng, who was facing the forbidden power within the hidden book room. At the same time, boom! The dimension of the demigod Forgotten Garden started to tremble, and light started to shine. The demigod Forgotten Garden is about to close. Chapter 670. The deafening explosion caused the geniuses of the sacred grounds nearby to tremble in fear. The area where the hidden library was located was turned into scorched earth. Golden flames and crimson light burned quietly. The warm youth and Zhao Feng were nowhere to be seen. There weren't even any remains of their corpses. The nearby geniuses couldn't bear to watch. Both Zhao Feng and Wen Luan were the dark horses of the demigod Forgotten Garden. What a pity! Nan Gongxing looked at the golden flames and the blood-colored light. Everything turned to dust without a trace. One had to admit that the legendary bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races were heaven-defying. Even under the constant attacks of Nan Gongxing and the Eye of Heaven, they were still able to kill their way to where Zhao Feng was and destroy everything. Boom! The dimension of the demigod Forgotten Garden started to tremble, and colorful lights flashed through the air. Meow meow! The little thieving cat sat on the Beast King and quickly flew over. Mengshi also arrived with it. Are they all dead? Mengshi was slightly dazed. She was exhausted before the demigod Forgotten Garden closed, so she gave up on fighting. Thieving cat, your master is already dead. Why don't you become my spiritual pet? Mengshi's dreamy eyes looked toward the little thieving cat. Although she still held a grudge against this thieving cat, if she could have such an intelligent spirit pet, even Mengshi would be moved. Meow. The little thieving cat's mouth twitched as it raised its head and looked into the clouds. Everyone followed its gaze and looked into the sky. That's high up in the clouds. A blue-haired youth with a pair of wind and lightning wings extended from his back. Traces of blue water appeared on his body. The blue-haired youth's face was pale white, and he seemed extremely weak. Zhao Feng. The expressions of Nan Gongxing, Mengshi, and company changed dramatically. That's right. The blue-haired youth in the clouds was Zhao Feng. Lightning wings flying technique. Zhao Feng's expression was cold as the wings of wind and lightning on his back flapped and blurred. Shua. The wings of wind and lightning flashed through the air, as if they had broken through space. The next instant, the wings of wind lightning appeared next to Nan Gongxing. Zhao Feng, Nan Gongxing exclaimed softly as he stared at the blue-haired youth within the light of the wings of wind and thunder. Apart from Nan Gongxing and Mengshi, no one else saw Zhao Feng's lightning wings flying technique. A strange light flashed through the little thieving cat's eyes. Indeed, Zhao Feng's thunder wings flying escape technique originated from a profound secret skill of the wings of wind and lightning. However, it wasn't hard to see that this movement technique was based on the little thieving cat's spatial movement technique and Nan Gongxing's spatial movement technique. In fact, when he was chasing Tu Juicing in the Mermaid Divine Hall, the lightning wings flying escape technique had already taken shape. Afterward, Zhao Feng comprehended King intent, and after observing Nan Gongxing's spatial movement technique, he finally completed the lightning wings flying technique. Zhao Feng sensed something the moment before the sunny young man blew himself up and destroyed everything in his path. His god's spiritual eye saw the changes in the warm youth's true yuan and bloodline energy. Therefore, at the critical moment, Zhao Feng used the lightning wings flying technique and barely escaped. Even then, Zhao Feng was also injured by the shockwave from Wen Luan's self-destruction. Blue water flowed around Zhao Feng's body and healed his injuries. Senior Martial Brother Nan Gongsheng, this is your reward. Zhao Feng opened his hand and handed over 10 purple-scaled grass and a mermaid tear to Nan Gongsheng. The eyes of everyone present almost popped out of their sockets when they saw this scene. Mengshi couldn't help but be surprised. No wonder Nan Gongsheng was working so hard to kill Wen Luan for Zhao Feng. So much so, she and Wen Luan were still planning, and hadn't even done anything when Zhao Feng and Nan Gongsheng attacked first. You're very strong. Nan Gongsheng took the purple-scaled grass and the mermaid tear, and gave a deep look at Zhao Feng. He could obviously tell that Zhao Feng's lightning wings flying technique had used some of the principles of his spatial movement technique. The first time he noticed Zhao Feng was at the 10,000 treasure tower. Zhao Feng's eye bloodline came through the air and took the sky-locking bow. At that time, he had already paid attention to this junior martial brother of the same clan. Senior martial brother Nan Gongsheng is too kind. You're the #1 genius of the sacred land. Zhao Feng said courteously. If he didn't have Nan Gongsheng's help, he wouldn't have been a match for the warm youth. On the other side, there was a trace of resentment and unwillingness on Mengshi's beautiful face, as well as a bit of fear. Zhao Feng and Nan Gongsheng didn't attack Mengshi. Mengshi's master was a mystic light realm sacred lord. No one was willing to offend her too much. Meow meow. The little thieving cat threw the purple horn into Mengshi's hand. The demigod Forgotten Garden was about to close. This purple Qilin jade horn no longer had any value unless the demigod Forgotten Garden opened 500 years later. Mengshi caught the horn, but she didn't seem to care. She looked at Zhao Feng a few times, as if she wanted to remember this enemy. Zhao Feng didn't move. His gaze fell on the golden flames and bloody light that were still burning. Wen Luan. Zhao Feng slowly spoke. One day we will switch roles. Who is the prey, and who is the hunter is still unknown. Hearing that, the hearts of the geniuses present shook. Many people finally realized that although the blazing golden light had dimmed by half, it was still burning and hadn't been extinguished. Wang. The golden flames suddenly shrank into a ball of golden flames, which flickered and transformed into a young man wreathed in golden flames and bloody light. What? The geniuses of the sacred land exclaimed. The flames of desire have been reborn. Mengshi watched as the radiant youth's body gradually condensed, and the golden flames around him retracted. Wen Luan's face was as pale as a sheet, and he half knelt on the ground. Zhao Feng found. Wen Luan's cultivation dropped from the late-stage Great Origin Core Realm to the early-stage Great Origin Core Realm, and he almost fell to the Small Origin Core Realm. However, at this moment, Zhao Feng was also powerless to attack the sunny youth. He had used up almost all of his eye bloodline power in Yuan Qi. Zhao Feng, our battle has just begun. If it wasn't for the demigod Forgotten Garden, if it wasn't for Nan Gongsheng, you would have died by my hands long ago. Wen Luan's pale face was filled with reluctance. At this moment, rumble, the demigod Forgotten Garden shook, and the entire dimension was covered in a layer of rainbow light. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The figures of the geniuses in the demigod Forgotten Garden turned transparent and disappeared from the demigod's garden. Zhao Feng and the others felt the power of the demigod intent. Unfortunately, the demigod intent has merged with the demigod Forgotten Garden and follows the laws left behind when it was alive. The Kuan-Yin partial thought murmured. The demigod intent was fair, and just like the heavenly Tao in the demigod Forgotten Garden, it didn't have its own consciousness and only followed the laws of nature. Zhao Feng understood. If he could obtain this demigod intent, then the Kuan-Yin partial thought's chances of regaining the strength of a demigod after being reborn with blood would increase. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's figure started to become transparent and was about to disappear from the demigod Forgotten Garden. However, right at this moment the situation changed. Boom! A shocking surge of demigod intent crushed over with a magnificent force. Zhao Feng's figure paused, as if he was frozen in the air. Not good. Zhao Feng's expression changed dramatically. He understood that the demigod intent was the god of the demigod Forgotten Garden, and ruled over everything. If the demigod intent wanted to kill someone, even a void god realm king wouldn't be able to fight back. At this moment, the Kuan Yin partial thought, and the demigod's blood within the green spiritual gourd started to tremble. Luckily, this vast energy only stopped on Zhao Feng's body for half a breath. One breath later, whoosh, Zhao Feng's transparent figure disappeared from the demigod Forgotten Garden. True martial sacred land, 10,000 ancient sacred peak. On the top of a mountain that was in ruins, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Geniuses of the sacred land came out from the demigod Forgotten Garden one after another. We're finally out. We've gained quite a bit this time. Some voices sounded from the crowd. Whoosh. Zhao Feng's figure also appeared from the crowd. No one noticed that Zhao Feng appeared slightly later than everyone else. Beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. At the last moment, the pressure of the demigods will descended upon him, giving him quite a scare. Junior brother Zhao, in this opening of the Forgotten Garden, you can be said to be the true dark horse. Chen Yilin, Jiang Fan and company gave him friendly gazes. For the opening of the Forgotten Garden this time, I'll have to trouble junior apprentice brother Zhao. That's right. If it wasn't for junior martial brother Zhao, we wouldn't have been able to take over the Mermaid Kingdom. Chen Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company were all grateful and respectful toward Zhao Feng. On the mystic true sacred clan's side, Zhao Feng's appearance attracted everyone's attention. Under Zhao Feng's lead, Chen Yilin and company took over the Mermaid Kingdom and obtained mermaid tears, illusion god wine, and several thousand years of success. Many people were envious. Junior martial brother Zhao, thank you for the purple-scaled grass and mermaid tears. Nan Gongxing said with a smile. The purple-scaled grass could make up for the difference between his bloodline and Meng Xi's, giving him a defensive bloodline. On the other hand, the mermaid tears could help cleanse his cultivation. After all, Nan Gongxing had only formed his king intent for a short time. Zhao Feng nodded his head in response. He guessed that Nan Gongxing would become a void god realm king soon. On the sacred peak, Zhao Feng became the focus of many geniuses, and there were many female geniuses who gave him flirtatious looks. In the crowd, senior martial brother Nan and Dong Wenjian had ugly expressions. When they first entered the demonic garden, Zhao Feng wasn't on the same team as them, and was mocked by senior martial brother Nan and company. At this moment in time, some geniuses in senior martial brother Nan's team couldn't help but feel regretful. Dong Wenjian's intestines turned green. He and Zhao Feng were both disciples of Emperor Duanmu. If he had followed Zhao Feng back then, he would have at least gotten some benefits from the Mermaid Kingdom. Shua, shua, shua. On the sacred peak, the elders of some clans that were at least at the king rank appeared. Most of them were worried about the safety and rewards of their juniors. Nan Gongxing, Zhao Feng, Chen Yilin and company from the mystic true sacred clan had obtained a lot, and were the winners of the demigod Forgotten Garden. The kings and emperors were all surprised by Zhao Feng's performance in the demigod Forgotten Garden. In terms of rewards, Zhao Feng and Nan Gongxing were evenly matched, or maybe even slightly better. Of course, no one knew that Zhao Feng had obtained the demigod's blood. An hour later, Zhao Feng returned to the main spiritual peak with the group from the mystic true sacred clan. Master, the excited voice of the Kuan Yin partial thought sounded from the green spiritual gourd as soon as he returned. What is it? Zhao Feng's divine sense entered the green spiritual gourd in his ancient metal ring. What he saw made him jump up in fright. Apart from the Kuan Yin partial thought and the demigod's blood, there was also a unique mental energy power within the green spiritual gourd. Demigod intent. Zhao Feng's soul felt suppressed. Chapter 671. The mental energy aura from the green spiritual gourd made Zhao Feng take in a cold breath. The demigod's blood and Kuan Yin partial thought within the gourd trembled slightly. The Kuan Yin partial thought trembled in excitement. Why did demigod intent come out? Zhao Feng's heart shook. Demigod intent was a type of mental energy that gave birth to the demigod's comprehension of heaven and earth. Luckily, this demigod intent was just pure mental energy. It was intelligent, but it didn't have its own memories. Zhao Feng and the Kuan-Yin partial thought discussed and found out the reason. The instant Zhao Feng left the Forgotten Garden, the demigod intent's power suddenly pressed down. Right at that moment, a part of the demigod intent entered the green spiritual gourd. Then, why did the demigod intent follow Zhao Feng? Zhao Feng thought that it was because of the demigod's blood and the Kuan-Yin partial thought. The demigod's blood corresponded to the demigod's body essence. The Kuan-Yin partial thought corresponded to the demigod's mental energy consciousness. When the two combined, it had the demigod's body and mental energy aura. Coincidentally, the demigod intent and the mental energy of a demigod sensed the aura of its master and followed Zhao Feng. That was why a part of the demigod intent left the Forgotten Garden and entered the green spiritual gourd. Master, with this demigod intent, I'll be able to return to my peak if I can be reborn from a single drop of blood. The Kuan-Yin partial thought said excitedly, because the demigod intent contained the demigod's comprehension of heaven and earth. At the same time, it was also a powerful mental energy. According to Zhao Feng's estimation, this small part of the demigod intent was comparable to a complete king intent. And because it came from a demigod, it was even more special. This meant that this demigod intent could suppress a king intent. But after being reborn as a demigod, I'll face a certain amount of danger, especially this demigod intent. Zhao Feng's eyes twinkled. He started to think about how to activate the demigod rebirth plan and use this power to the fullest. Think about it. Given how transcendent a demigod was, once he came back to life, how could he willingly submit to Zhao Feng? Master, if I'm reborn and possess this demigod intent, I'll be able to enter the demigod Forgotten Garden at will and regain control of it. Kuan-Yin's remnant will try its best to persuade Zhao Feng. Control the demigod Forgotten Garden. Zhao Feng's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. The level of the demigod Forgotten Garden was much higher than the Purple Saint ruins. Even emperors and mystic light realm sacred lords couldn't resist its temptation. If he could control the demigod Forgotten Garden, he would have an enormous amount of resources, which would greatly boost his cultivation. I promised to activate the demigod rebirth project, but not now. Zhao Feng nodded. He did not lose his cool. With his current strength, even if he were to awaken as a demigod and take control of the demigod Forgotten Garden, it would only bring disaster upon himself. The true martial sacred land had 2 3-star sects and 33 2-star sections. How could they let a junior, who wasn't even a king, take all the benefits of the demigod Forgotten Garden? In the next couple of days, Zhao Feng started to recover from his injuries. His divine sense started to clear out the spoils of war in the demigod Forgotten Garden. During this period of time, Zhao Feng also met some small problems. After leaving the demigod Forgotten Garden, some people came to visit him every day. At first, it was Dong Wenjian from the same clan. In the next couple of days, it was other core disciples, kings, and emperors from the upper echelon of the clan. Most of these people were interested in what Zhao Feng had obtained in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Several kings and emperors hinted that they wanted to trade Zhao Feng's sky-locking bow, or borrow the head of a demigod corpse. Many geniuses needed the Immortal Springs wine, Illusion God wine, Mermaid tears, and purple scaled grass. Some kings and emperors came to ask for a trade for their disciples. The Illusion God wine could help one comprehend higher realms, and help one break through to the Void God realm. In the sect, some of the mid-level half-step kings were also very eager for it. As for the purple scaled grass, it could increase a bloodline ability, and it was very attractive to some kings. Zhao Feng dominated the purple smoke lake in the demigod Forgotten Garden, and obtained countless treasures. Some of the treasures weren't as valuable as the Illusion God wine, but any 1 or 2 of them were enough to make normal sovereign lords go crazy. Over the past few days, the door to Zhao Feng's residence had almost been flattened. Zhao Feng reluctantly agreed to some of the deals, but he rejected others. He didn't want to offend those kings and emperors. However, Zhao Feng wouldn't trade the sky-locking bow or the demigod corpse. Zhao Feng also wanted to keep some illusion god wine and mermaid tears for himself, mainly for Zhao Yufei. This was because Zhao Yufei's bloodline was extremely compatible with the heaven-earth yuan qi, but her comprehension of the soul was slightly lacking. In order to get rid of these problems, Zhao Feng had to leave his residence and move to Duan Muqing's palace. Although Duan Muqing hadn't returned yet, this was still the residence of a martial emperor. Furthermore, Duan Muqing left a void god projection in the martial emperor's residence. Finally, Zhao Feng's life became quieter. The butler of the martial emperor's residence helped Zhao Feng block most visitors. Even some kings and emperors couldn't force Duan Muqing's void god projection. In the martial emperor's residence, inside a secluded secret hall, Zhao Feng sat cross-legged on the ground with 3 wine cups floating above his palm. 1 purple crystal cup, 1 redwood cup, and 1 bronze cup. The 3 cups corresponded to 3 types of spiritual wine and celestial wine. Illusion god wine, dragonflame wine, lightning cloud wine. These 3 wines belonged to the same level and came from the demigod's wine cellar. Dragonflame wine and lightning cloud wine can increase my comprehension of the scarlet destruction wind lightning. Zhao Feng had a plan. Apart from these 2 wines, he also had the head of the demigod corpse. The demigod corpse contained the aura of the god tribulation lightning, which might help Zhao Feng increase the power of the wind lightning inheritance. The power of the god tribulation lightning countered all cultivators in heaven and earth. It could be said to be the most terrifying lightning. Lightning shock. 10,000 lightning sect? Maybe I'll give you guys a surprise. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face. Chua. Zhao Feng waved his hand and put away the 3 wines. He had gained a lot from the demigod Forgotten Garden and could improve a lot. 3 days later, Zhao Feng's injuries had fully recovered, and his energy had returned to its peak. Master, when will the demigod revival plan start? The Kuan Yin partial thought couldn't help but ask. Right now it was only a wisp of soul intent. It didn't even have a physical body, so it wasn't even considered a soul. In a few more days, Zhao Feng took out a mermaid tear and a soul-gathering grass and gave them to the Kuan Yin partial thought. Next, his target was the demigod's blood. The demigod's blood was the key to reviving from a single drop of blood. For example, the Purple Knight Sacred Lord didn't even leave a drop of blood behind, so there was no way for him to revive. Appear! Zhao Feng grabbed at the air, and a drop of faint golden god blood appeared on his palm. The secret hall he was in was extremely well sealed, so he didn't need to worry about the aura of the demigod's blood leaking out. Furthermore, after the battle in the demigod Forgotten Garden, the demigod's blood was extremely weak, and its ability to resist was much weaker. Next, what Zhao Feng needed to do was absorb a portion of the demigod's blood's power. The demigod's blood essence contained the essence of the demigod's body, and it was extremely beneficial to those below the Sacred Lord realm. Ice Imperial Seal. A crystal-like dark blue seal of light appeared on Zhao Feng's other hand. It was like an ice lotus had bloomed, and it radiated the cold power of the Ice Imperial Emperor. The first step. He needed to freeze the demigod's blood essence first, so that he could absorb the demigod's power. Therefore, Zhao Feng circulated his bloodline power to the maximum, and he unleashed the full power of the Ice Imperial Spear. It took an entire hour. Zhao Feng had only managed to freeze the demigod's blood essence, after using more than half of his bloodline power. Next, Zhao Feng started to absorb the power of the demigod's blood through the power of the ice-water bloodline. Master, you can't do this. The Kuan Yin partial thought within the green spiritual gourd cried out. Zhao Feng remained unmoved as he slowly absorbed the power of the demigod's blood. Wang! A wisp of faint golden blood slowly merged into Zhao Feng's bloodline. At this moment, Zhao Feng's state of existence was comparable to a king's. The crystal core within his body had also reached the early stage Great Origin Core realm. His physical defense had been strengthened by the purple-scaled grass, and it was one of the strongest below the Void God realm. However, when the wisp of faint golden blood merged into his bloodline body, Zhao Feng felt a piercing pain in his bones and flesh. His true yuan and bloodline started to tremble. However, the effect of the demigod's blood was also shocking. It was more than 100 times stronger than the heart blood essence. Just a few wisps of faint golden blood caused Zhao Feng's bloodline to increase by leaps and bounds. Even the quality of Zhao Feng's true yuan and the power of his soul also increased. Blood essence contained the essence of an expert's spirit, energy, and soul. On top of that, this drop of blood essence came from a demigod. 2 days later, Zhao Feng's bloodline became stronger. My state of existence has reached the void god realm. Excitement flashed through Zhao Feng's eyes. He hadn't even absorbed 1/10 of the demigod's blood's effect. Within the green spiritual gourd. Master, you need at least 60% God's blood, or else the success rate of rebirth will decrease. The Kuan-Yin partial thought cried. Zhao Feng ignored it, and continued to absorb the power of the demigod's blood. On this day, an idea suddenly appeared in Zhao Feng's mind. He merged a wisp of faint golden blood into his left eye through the ice water bloodline. Merged the god's blood into the god's spiritual eye. Boom! A loud explosion sounded in Zhao Feng's soul dimension. Within the dimension of his left eye, the lake of eye bloodline power started to surge, and a suction force came from the whirlpool. Instantly, the power of the demigod's blood quickly flowed into the god's spiritual eye. The situation was like a dried-up river meeting dew after a long drought. In the blink of an eye, 1/3 of the demigod's blood's power was absorbed. Zhao Feng's left eye started to shine with a purple light, and the divine power from the ancient era became stronger. Whoosh! Part of Zhao Feng's hair was purple as it blew in the wind. At this instant, the hearts of many king martial emperors, within the true martial sacred land, shook as they sensed something not good. Zhao Feng immediately blocked the god's spiritual eye, and stopped absorbing the demigod's blood. At this moment, only half of the demigod's blood remained. A portion of the power was absorbed or stored by Zhao Feng's body, and the rest was absorbed by the god's spiritual eye. Zhao Feng's left eye glittered with a purple light, and even more faint purple appeared in his hair. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.